MEC Matombe Chilwane says the province is devastated by a tragic collision involving a minibus used as scholar transport and a truck in Vanderbilt Park in Gauteng. This morning's incident on Fred Rostra Road has claimed the lives of 13 learners. 3 learners sustained critical injuries and are receiving treatment at local hospitals. Chilwane has called for stricter oversight and vigilance around private scholar transport.
I've called for greater vigilance from parents and also schools. I've called for vigilance on their part. They know that I've told them that they have a responsibility, amongst others, to look at the cars that are dropping learners at school, to also have a register of each and every vehicle that brings in children into that school, so that they are able to account that this car, this plate number and this driver are responsible for this particular child.
Limpopo's Roads MEC Ernest Rachuane says they will start rebuilding the damaged road and bridges when the severe weather conditions clear. It's still raining in some parts of the province. The national government has classified the flood-hit provinces as national disaster areas. In Limpopo, the disaster management says 18 people have lost their lives. Rachuane says people should not cross overflowing rivers and low-lying bridges.
We'll do everything in our power to make sure that we bring back the situation to its former glory exactly after all these things shall pass. Because the fact of the matter is that it's very difficult for us to even deploy our dikhere on the ground. But what I can say to our people is that where we can access the road, we'll be able to deploy our machinery together with our men from cost centers. That the situation that we find ourselves, we all agree that we have not planned for, but the fact of the matter is that we are ready to make sure that we put our foot on the ground.
The Department of Correctional Services announced a 94.4% pass rate for 180 inmates who wrote the matric exams for 2025. Minister in the department, Dr. Peter Groenewald, announced the results at the Goodwood Correctional Centre in Cape Town. Groenewald says KZN was the best performer with 45 bachelor passes. He says there are 132 distinctions overall.
It is therefore a joyful moment to announce that the overall pass rate for correctional services schools in 2025 stands at an impressive 94.4%, surpassing the national average of 88%. 15 of our schools achieved 100% pass rate, improving from 13 schools in 2024.
U.S. President Donald Trump has written to the Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Store saying that as he was not awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, he no longer feels obliged to think purely of peace. In his letter, Trump also said the world would not be secure unless the U.S. has complete control of Greenland. At a news conference in London, the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said he did not believe the U.S. was likely to use military means to take it over.
I think that this can be resolved and should be resolved through calm discussion, but with the application of the principles and values that I've set out in terms of who decides the future of Greenland, and making clear that the use of tariffs in this way is completely wrong.
Recapping the top story, the ad hoc committee investigating allegations of criminal infiltration, corruption and political interference in the justice system has resolved to subpoena private investigator Paul O'Sullivan. I'm on Delambana for SFM News headlines at 3:30.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Well, 3 hours of the National Pulse starting now, but first things first, let's get a sports headline.
Thank you very much, Ashraf. That's right. We're looking to Sadio Mane this afternoon. The leader has been dubbed the one saving Senegal from that AFCON final chaos, and we also bring you some exciting actions behind the URC as there's confidence in France that is setting the stage for the Bulls. All the details at around 3:30.
The National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
I think it's a fair question. It's a fair question to ask you today, and it's a fair question that you're going to share with your families and your children and grandchildren down the years, right? When you sit over this fireside chat, which is, where were you the day when a team walked off the pitch with about a minute to go at the end of full time of the African Cup of Nations tournament and stayed off for about, I think, 17 minutes. And for all intents and purposes, that was it. They were gone. They were out. And possibly also going to be suspended as well. Where were you then? And where were you then when the coach called him off? And where were you then later on when Sadio Mane, the leader of the team, really, the captain was suspended, but the leader of the team really beckoned them to come back on, and then got to the change rooms, got them back on, started the game, restarted the game. The penalty for Morocco got fluffed up, and the Senegalese changed momentum and went on to win with a quite magnificent goal. I know where I was. Where were you? Tell your children about it. Yeah, my name's Ashraf Garda. This is the National Pulse. 3 hours of the issues that moves the nation and globally as well, of course, starting now. And you can connect with us by calling in live 086 000 2032 when we open the lines. You can WhatsApp right away. We'll bank your calls, starting with your where were you? Where were you last night? I mean, obviously, I was sitting till close to midnight watching that entire game, right? And all that was missing was a penalty shootout at the end because the Moroccans did not equalize. 0614 104 107 to WhatsApp, text or voice note. And if you're up for tweeting, go for it. Hashtag the National Pulse. A lot we're going to talk about. By the way, if you want to throw your thoughts ahead to Davos and the World Economic Forum and just what you see as the importance of that, go ahead and do so. You want to talk about Donald Trump and his latest line, as you heard in the news. No more peace promises from him. Yeah, I want to talk about that too. Let's, however, stay in South Africa to start with. And the government has declared a national disaster over torrential rains and floods that have killed at least 30 people in our country, damaged thousands of homes, washed away roads and bridges. We know this. The worst impact is the northern provinces of Limpopo and Mpumalanga, where the fatalities occurred, right? Let's try and understand the why and what this means now that we have this national disaster being declared, with Professor Wiseman Chingombe, Professor of Physical Geography at the University of Mpumalanga School of Biology and Environmental Sciences. Prof. Chingombe, thank you for joining us on the National Pulse.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Well, of course, we talk to you at a time of, I think in great sadness, because the obvious one is at least 30 people have died because of this mass flooding, but it's beyond just the lives, although those lives are critically important. There's so much destruction, right? Let's talk about it. The fact that government declared a national disaster, what would be the implications of that?
Can you come again with your question? My line is a little bit...
I was saying, what would be the implications of declaring a national disaster? We know why, but what would that then mean in terms of the managing of the process?
Well, declaring it a disaster, a national disaster, it means that authorities, both at provincial and national level, are able to pull together resources in order to manage the situation.
Let's talk about the situation, your understanding of what has caused it, because it seems like not just in South Africa but around the world that there's extremities when it comes to weather changes.
Yes, what we need to do is to understand really how the situation we are having started off. It's basically that there was a low pressure zone that was sitting in the Indian Ocean, just east of Mozambique, which was stationary for quite considerable lengthy time, which has been responsible for the production of the rains that have affected Malawi, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Mpumalanga, Limpopo, and KZN. And this system has now shifted a little bit towards the east, but it is closer to Mpumalanga and Limpopo and KZN. This is why we are still having these torrential downpours. The net effect is that the rains have been heavy, and they have resulted in flash floods. In low-lying areas, these have been flooded, leading to the destruction of infrastructure. And in the game parks, we have had the wild animals being affected also. So it's so devastating that in the communities, the socio-economic fabric has been affected. The livelihoods of people have been affected. Communication systems have been also damaged, and houses, schools, roads, bridges, and this is a disaster that we are faced with. And thanks to the authorities, they've declared this as a national disaster, which means that authorities are now going to come in, pull resources together, and try to manage the situation.
Well, what about, we often get asked about this, that is the state of readiness when you have a disaster of this sort. So 2 questions. How ready is South Africa to handle disasters of this sort? And should we be even more ready? I mean, are we able and capable, or is that something that's just wishful thinking because it's completely beyond the control of any government?
You see, the nature of natural disasters, they do not have a calendar, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's something that happens out of the environmental dynamics that exist. South Africa has early warning systems. I think the weather services do play a very important role in giving out early warning information that communities can use in order to be prepared for any eventuality. But, human beings, for being what we are, at times we react rather slow to these messages that are given, and then we are caught up in these events. But the South African scenario is such that the early warning systems are in place, and these are given out regularly in the event of any pending natural disaster of this kind. This is why we have the levels that are being given to say we are now at level 10, and this is a high risk level. Yes, which means that all systems, state systems, local government systems are activated to respond to these natural disasters.
And I mean, and the point that you said that, with natural disasters, there's no calendar, right? But your personal thoughts about, has South Africa been able to do enough to mitigate against a possible disaster if and when it happens?
In my opinion, South Africa has done tremendously well because the early warning systems are in place, the weather services are up to scratch, they give these warnings, and then the local municipalities do respond to this, though responses might be a little bit slow that eventually they will rise to the occasion. Because if you look at the magnitude of the flooding that we are having now, had it not been for the early warning systems warning people, the consequences would have been far much greater than what we have experienced.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Is there anything else you think, considering whatever resources we have and the limitations naturally, that you'd like to see South Africa even add more to bolster to be able to insulate against further disasters when they happen?
The most important issue I would really like to see happening is an increase in the education of the communities, so that they are able to respond to these early warning systems and then react accordingly.
All right. Any other final thought that you'd like to share in terms of the, you made the point about now it being declared a national disaster, which then allows, greater interventions, right? But central to all of this is the fact that there are human beings who are displaced, and of course others have lost their lives. Do you think enough attention is paid to that, the human story around this tragedy?
That also is an issue that needs serious attention, because when early warning signals are given, it all depends on how the human beings are going to respond to this, or there is need to really educate the communities about the kind of early warning systems that they are given, such that the response rate as compared to the magnitude of the natural disaster would match what communities are doing and what they can benefit from the exercises of, for example, moving from low-lying ground to high ground, and what it is that they have to carry with them, so that their movement will not make them be caught by the natural disaster before they get to the high ground.
Yeah, good point. I think just the general awareness and being able to be alert to potential dangers. I mean, we hear so many stories of, cars taking a chance trying to cross a flooded river because they think it's shallow enough and they can make a plan, and it cost them their lives. So absolutely. Let's leave it at that. Professor Wiseman Chingombe, the Professor of Physical Geography at the University of Mpumalanga School of Biology and Environmental Sciences. And linked to that is the news of this massive disaster where the rains have come and they've come and they've come, and there's been massive flooding as a result of that. 30 people we know killed, damage running into thousands of homes, and of course bridges washed away, roads. Kruger Park, for example, has been shut down for the better part of the last few days. There's been so many disasters. I saw the picture of an elephant trying to catch his little baby, right, before, in an attempt to prevent the baby and the mum being, swept away, and of course the baby then survives. And what stories, man. That's where they are. Anyway, this is the National Pulse. Thanks for joining us. By the way, just from a pure human story, if you are in those regions, Limpopo and Mpumalanga in particular, and you'd like to share your personal story of how this flooding has affected you or others close to you, and I hope you don't have a story about loss of life and loss of homes, but the reality is there are people you may know who may have those stories, and if you can share that with us, please do so, just so that we understand you better, at the very least, so we can give you that hearing. 086 000 2032, WhatsApp, text a voice note, 0614 104 107. I'll pick out some of your WhatsApp comments, including that horrific school kids disaster. That's just such a common occurrence in our country.
This is Lungi on any other regular day.
This economy makes me post once a day. Who does that. Like, ew.
Now this is Lungi getting extra with the 20 gig summer deal for just 99 Rand.
I have so many gigs. I could even have a gig, guys. I'm going live every single day, Tommy, because get
Extra your summer. Get 20 gigs plus 2 months free YouTube Premium and 100 Vodabucks. Exclusively on the Vodapay app. T's and C's apply. Further together. Vodacom.
You can become a victim of a legal problem. Wrongful arrest, assault, uncontested divorce, rental disputes, maintenance matters, or labor problems. It can happen to you. Clientele Legal provides tough professional lawyers for an affordable monthly premium. Our legal team is standing by to assist you 24 hours a day. Join today. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
As the nation seeks answers, SAFM brings you live, uninterrupted coverage of Parliament's ad hoc committee investigating allegations made by KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Commissioner, Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. You can also stay up to date with the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into Criminality, Political Interference and Corruption in the Criminal Justice System. Stay informed, stay connected. Tune in live on SAFM 104 to 107 and follow the coverage across our digital platforms live on Facebook, X and YouTube at SAFM Radio. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Ashraf Garda is streaming live now on Facebook, YouTube, and X at SAFM Radio.
Right, let's get your comments. I had a chat with Lebo, he produces Kathy's show just before the show started, and he was talking about how their show this morning, as they were talking about the South African Human Rights Commission wanting to, pushing for a keener line in terms of taxis and public transport for school children. At the same time, the news came of these kids who had passed away, and it's just such a terrible story, but it's also a terrible recurring story.
Afternoon, Ashraf. Here in Kala. Ashraf, the 1994 government must blame themselves for this painful death of our kids through car accidents. We used to have schools close to 1 lives before, Ashraf. This government closed many schools and came up with this scholar transport thing or program in the name that schools have few learners and they are saving money. The walls of those schools are still standing there. Many changes they brought in our lives as South African has dented and damaged our lives. Thanks, Ashraf Mqete here.
Thanks, Mqete. But you really attribute it to that? I mean, there are people who travel not just for school, who travel 50 k's a day for work. You get, the company representatives on the road all the time, truck drivers on the road all the time. So transport's always going to be an issue. The fact is not so much the distance. I understand the school part, it's a separate one. But the fact is our roads could be a mess, the physical roads and the way we drive. And the utter, let me put it this way, I'm trying to use a football analogy because we had the AFCON yesterday. If you're going to lunge in with a wild tackle, you're going to get sent off. And we have far too many of our drivers, particularly, public transport. I'm talking of like taxis, right? Because anecdotally, we have those examples. They're effectively lunging in with a wild tackle and they're paying the price. And so are the children who are being commuted, or the adults as well when it happens. So this is another horrible story. And thanks for sharing your thoughts on that.
Ashraf, it's John in Bloemfontein. Each and every day, I hate social media, especially since they started monetizing content creation and all of that. People have become, I'm sorry, but for lack of a better word, but they've become stupid. How can somebody take a video and pictures of kids lying on the ground and post that on social media just so they can get engagement and all of that and get paid? Come on, man. Come on, guys. Be better. Be better. Be better. Be better. Come on, guys. No, man. Be better.
Well, listen, I completely agree with you. Listen, social media has its purpose, right? And so does news gathering. But you can't get this dramatic situation of people dying and others wanting to get the first shot so that, their pages can trend. It's a terrible scenario, but it's a gratification that, I think we all struggle to understand it. Point taken from yourself. Now, there's a call from Cape Town. Want to talk about crime stats in that region. Lubabalo, go for it. Hello. Yeah, Lubabalo, you live. Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, you're live on the National Pulse. Go for it.
Yes, Ashraf, you know what, it's very sad that I have to talk to you about this, but we here in Cape Town, Kukuletu, and all the townships, we are experiencing severe murder rates, people being murdered and mass shootings happening everywhere. And I look at this commissioner of police that we have here, which is Timothy Paikile. The man is useless. Under his watch, thousands, 1,400 Cape Townians have died just last year. And this is across the board, all Cape Flats, all informal settlements. So we just want to find out if maybe the ANC or the government or whoever can help us and remove this guy, put in someone who's competent to help us fight this surge of crime that's happening in Cape Town, because it's really, really bad, Ashraf.
Well, thank you for that. And I, again, sympathies or my empathy is there towards you. But, here's the point, Lubabalo, it's not just Cape Town, although Cape Town's an issue. I think these commissions we've been having, the root causes is what we're trying to dip into. And whatever the reasons, there's been massive compromises in terms of the police being able to carry on their work. And hopefully when all this is done, we should be in a position where there's an absolute, do I say clean sweep, but certainly a clear out of all the police officers who may be undermining even the state themselves. So your point is taken, and therefore we pay the price through crime. Not acceptable, but point well made. What about Donald Trump?
Afternoon, Ashraf. With Donald Trump, it's damned if you do and damned if you don't. So Donald Trump is just going to do what Donald Trump thinks is best for America. And if we don't see the threat of China and Russia, Donald Trump does. And if we want to talk against him, I'm just so glad that he's just focused on the job. He's got another 3 more years in office, and he's going to lay the foundation for a great America for the future. So I don't know why we are partnering with Iran. I don't know why we are partnering with Russia and China. No problem having a relationship with them, but we need to see the bigger picture, which Donald Trump does.
And thanks for that. But what is the bigger picture? You see, so one thing you're talking about him doing what's good for America, but is what he's doing good for America good for the world as well? I'm not discussing China and Iran, and yes, we can talk about them, but you mentioned Donald Trump. Is what he's saying and doing right now good for America and good for the world as well? I wonder. Here's another comment.
Good afternoon, Dada Ashraf. It is said to pass condolences to the families of the children that just passed on the roads. It is sad because there's reckless drivers on the roads. It doesn't matter you've got a brand new truck, you've got a brand new taxi, roadworthy, not roadworthy. If the driver behind the wheel is reckless, we're going to have such issues. This thing of saying we need rail is not going to work, because right now the reality is we've got trucks, we've got cars on the roads. We need responsible driving.
Well, we absolutely do. I just wonder, why is it we absolutely can't get a handle on it? And how come, for example, driving on the roads is not a major election issue? Has it ever been a major election issue? About a complete rethink in terms of the way we drive on the roads and the cars we drive and what we do and what we can't do, because our numbers statistically, they are horrific. 3:30, here's the news headlines with Ondela Mbana.
Thank you, Ashraf. On the news headlines, President Cyril Ramaphosa has arrived at Mjajani, east of Malelane in Nkomazi in Mpumalanga, to assess the damage caused by the recent heavy rains. His visit comes 3 days after the government declared a national disaster over the widespread flooding in various parts of the country. The ad hoc committee investigating allegations of criminal infiltration, corruption and political interference in the justice system has resolved to subpoena private investigator Paul O'Sullivan, and Prince Harry has arrived in court for a case he's bringing against one of Britain's biggest newspapers. The Daily Mail stands accused of hacking the prince's phone and using deception to obtain information. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
Are we ready for a real conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the R24 eastbound in Kempton Park has a crash reported before the R21 airport interchange, and Mabopane Highway westbound in Pretoria has roadworks reported with traffic restrictions at the Hairpin Bend. In KZN, the N3 northbound has congestion from Ashburton interchange ramp and a stationary vehicle on the N2 southbound after Sabaya Drive, the left shoulder is blocked. In Cape Town, the N7 northbound in Summer Greens is where a crash is reported near Bosmansdam Road, and Strand Road eastbound in Stikland, slow moving towards the R300 highway. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Right, Zai, listen, I slept at midnight or slightly after.
You and me.
Of course, yeah. What's on the agenda now?
Oh, man, African football. Ashraf, I just saw your tweet about, that fair play, that he was going to be the man. And he was definitely the man of the moment. And the man of the moment still is right now. Sadio Mane at this 2025 Africa Cup of Nations. He's going to explain to us the decision that led him recalling the team, returning to the pitch just before extra time. Mane, who captained the Teranga Lions during the final last night against the host Morocco in the absence of suspended captain Kalidou Koulibaly. The situation got heated just before halftime when a Democratic Republic of Congo referee, Jean-Jacques Ndala, awarded a late penalty to the host following the VAR review. Yes, Sadio Mane.
Yeah, I know, football is always sometimes this kind of things, which is for me not the best things can happen in football, because football is something special and the world is watching, the world love football. I think football just to pleasure, so I think we just need to give especially a great image of football. Yeah, I think he will be crazy to not play this game, because the referee give penalty and go out of the game, and I think this is going to be the worst things especially in Africa football. For me, I rather lose than this kind of things happen to our football.
There we go, Sadio Mane right here on the National Pulse. In the meantime, the Confederation of African Football has vowed to take appropriate action following the chaotic scenes that marred the match last night in Rabat. CAF has condemned what it described as unacceptable behavior from some players and officials during Senegal's 1-0 extra time victory over Morocco. Even FIFA President Gianni Infantino has also condemned the incidents, criticizing the walk-off by the Senegal players as unacceptable. Let's go to rugby, where the Lions captain Frank Horn believes there are valuable lessons to take from their final EPCR Challenge Cup outing. Despite the result bringing their European campaign to an end, the Johannesburg side were eliminated after a 20-all draw with Perignon at Stade Mghiral, and that took place over the weekend.
And the positive outcomes is to show that we can play in that type of weather. We have a good enough pack to be able to dominate set piece and have any 9 or 10 who's there put us in the right areas of the field, and then with good defense put teams under pressure.
And finally, netball news. Former South Africa men's captain Shiko Mokela has been appointed head coach of the national men's netball team on a 4-year contract. Mokela takes over from Jabulani Vilane and will be assisted by Siyabonga Kuzwayo as the team build towards the first men's netball World Cup in 2028. That's your sport. We'll be back with more here on the National Pulse.
Zai, before I let you go,
Yes.
I mean, just a quick one. So, I mean, I know CAF now are going to investigate all of this. So, as per my tweet, I was not so much the result. At one stage, I'm telling myself, if Senegal gets off the pitch and stays off the pitch, and I know many people in South Africa have tweeted, that's the way to go, show them what you do. The reality is there's bad refereeing decisions just about anywhere in the world, and even in our local football. But if we encourage teams to walk off the pitch, you're not going to have any games completed. And my concern at that stage was like the implications to Senegal being suspended by CAF, not fined, suspended, and therefore not just playing African football, but also for the World Cup would be severe. I don't know, they're going to investigate. Who knows what's still going to happen next? Do you have any idea what could happen?
Oh, Ashraf, they're busy as we speak reviewing all the footage from the tournament all the way leading up to the final. So I think it's going to be a lot of pressure for the Senegalese as well as Morocco for, hosting the tournament as well. So we'll have to wait and see, because this is the final controversy that's going to be echoing long after the final whistle went off last night.
You see, here's the last thing just for you to think about, even for later on, and certainly to the audience too, right? That really, I'm not even debating the goals and whether they were offsides or penalties or whether there should be a VAR. Just the principle of, do you know of any club or country that has walked off a pitch because they did not agree with the decision of the referee and they were infuriated, whatever the mitigating circumstances, and they walked off and they got away with it? In this case, I think they were off for 17 minutes or something like that, and they were luckily called back on. But if anybody knows, I'd love to know. Zai, thanks for that. It's certainly worth thinking about. Do you know of any team that's walked off a pitch and came back, or walked off a pitch, did not come back at all, and what happened to them next in any sport, not just in football? Okay, this is the National Pulse.
With the ever-changing financial landscape, it can be difficult to make sense of all the moves at times. Join me, Jimmy Moyaha, on the SAFM Market Update with MoneyWeb, Mondays to Thursdays, 6 to 7 p.m, as we break down the key market trends, top financial stories, and smart investment insights, all in one place. It's everything you need to stay financially informed and ahead of the curve.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. SAFM.
I'll tell you what, one of the things with a show like this is you have to have material, meaning something that you need that can drive a show. And I'll tell you what, this post about Donald Trump is almost like a believe it or not one. And it's an interesting one because the news has come through that and this is his message. Donald Trump, his message. Dear Jonas. So he sent a message to the Nobel Prize winning, the host, Norway, right? Dear Jonas, considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars plus, I no longer feel an obligation to think purely for peace, although it will always be predominant, but can now think about what is good and proper for the United States of America. Denmark cannot protect that land from Russia or China. And why do they have a right of ownership anyway? There are no written documents. It's only that a boat landed there hundreds of years ago. But we had boats landing there also. I have done more for NATO than any other person since its founding, and now NATO should do something for the United States. The world is not secure unless we have complete and total control of Greenland. Thank you, President DJT, as in Donald Trump, right? Right, what do you make of all of that? And really, if you're wondering whether it's fake news, it's not fake news, okay? Okay, let's talk about Trump and Greenland. Tom Hoyam, who served as Denmark's last minister for Greenland, amazingly, in the 1980s, weighs in on whether rising tension between NATO and the USA could lead to a military confrontation. In fact, just his understanding of exactly what the story is, right? Trump, remember, has warned that 8 European nations now face tariffs rising from 10% to potentially 25% if Greenland isn't sold to the United States, right? Tom Hoyem, then former Danish minister to Greenland, much appreciate your time and thanks for joining us.
Yes. Hello here from Germany.
Thank you so much, right? Well, firstly, listen, we all have opinions. I think you'd have a stronger opinion being closer to the action regarding Denmark and Greenland than ever. What do you make of what's going on there, specifically Donald Trump pronouncing on Greenland and what he wants?
First of all, I have to say that this is a very deep crisis in NATO. I'm an older man, and in my lifetime, NATO has been the guarantee for the peace in Europe. And here we have, for the first time, a crisis where one member of the NATO, that means United States, is at least threatening, maybe even trying to attack another member, the Kingdom of Denmark, inclusive Greenland. This is a very deep crisis, but it's also a strange crisis by many reasons. But first of all, Mr. Trump is saying that the Arctic area is now increasingly a risk area, and he's right. But we have known that for some time, and both Denmark, Greenland, and United States certainly have not reacted to this increasingly risk area where more military is needed. So we are saying to not only to United States, but directly to Mr. Trump, please send more military. We are very open. They have in Greenland 17 bases, and they are only using one. And they had originally maybe nearly 20,000 soldiers, and now they have 150. And we are saying, we, NATO, inclusive America, we would like more military security in the Arctic area. That's the one thing which is making this crisis so incredible. The second thing is, Greenland has a lot of raw materials, a lot of mining possibilities like South Africa. The difference is that it is extremely difficult to use it in the Arctic area due to the very, very thick ice, 3,000 meter thick ice. However, we say, Greenland, Denmark, we would like you very much to invest in mining, invest in raw materials in the whole Arctic area, and especially in Greenland. So the substance behind this is very strange to understand. And then Mr. Trump is saying that he does not understand why Greenland at all is Danish. I'm sorry, but here he needs more help from his civil servants. Greenland has been together with Denmark for 300 years. And when I'm sorry, it's too serious to laugh at, but when he says that 500 years ago we had some boats there, and so had United States. United States did not exist at all at that time. However, we have been together in the development of Greenland, Denmark in the kingdom, and in 1916 there was a discussion with the United States, the President Wilson, that was in the First World War, and President Wilson asked if he could buy the Virgin Islands. At that time it was, well, not so unusual to buy and sell territories. United States had bought Alaska from Russia, and here we sold the Virgin Islands in the First War, and we got $25 million for this, and a document saying in 1916 with the signing of President Wilson, Greenland is and will forever be Danish. So it's very strange that Mr. Trump does not know that.
All right. So you're saying he's got his history wrong. Let's park that aside. You did mention that, even NATO has called for greater protection of Greenland because you see it under threat. Explain why you see it under threat. And you see it under threat from what? China, Russia? Is that what you see? You concur with Donald Trump about that?
Well, the threat I see, especially now, because the climate change means that you can sail different ways because the ice is melting. And that means that suddenly the whole Arctic area is more accessible than it has been before. That's one thing. The second thing is that Russia and before that Soviet, they have for many, many years increased the presence in the Arctic area, and Soviet, now Russia, they have a very big Arctic area, and they have more and more had also tough military issues there, and also discussed with other Arctic countries. About China, China uses a completely different way. There are no warships from China around in the Arctic area. There are ships from Russia, but not at all from China. You know more than I in Africa that China uses the way of buying infrastructure, building infrastructure. They have tried that also in Greenland twice. They have tried to invest in an airport, and they have tried to invest in mining. And both of these trying to invest were rejected from Denmark, Greenland.
So what do you then make of, of Trump's position, where he sees himself, if we ignore the mineral aspect of it all, he sees himself as the guardian of Greenland, and wants to support, wants to get in on the front of that support, or else to the point where his raising of tariffs is a clear threat. Some may call it sanctions in a different way. What do you make of his gambit?
Well, I think that he's from the time where also in the American schools they heard about Greenland from time to time, and always about these historical discussions if Greenland belonged to the United States, because Greenland is, as we know, a part of the American continent. And then, of course, it's linked to the whole Monroe Doctrine, saying that in the whole area of the Western world, United States should be dominant, and that no other states should have an influence there. You experienced that many years ago, with the Cuba crisis, where Soviet under Khrushchev tried to send rockets to Cuba, and it was stopped by Kennedy. And the argumentation at that time was also the Monroe Doctrine. But the letter we have, the document we have from 1916 from Milton, is clearly accepting that Greenland is Danish. I do not know why Mr. Trump, well, I do know why he is interested in the Arctic area. Of course, it is a security risky zone, but why he is talking so much about ownership is a bit difficult to understand. But I think he had misunderstood what the Kingdom of Denmark is. He sees that Greenland, which is so huge, with only 56,000 inhabitants, has got more and more independence, autonomy, inside the Danish kingdom. And I guess that the people around Mr. Trump is fearing what is happening if this huge island with so few people will suddenly be totally independent.
Yeah.
But it's actually going the other way. We are together in the kingdom very, very strongly, and there are closer relations to the European Union again than before.
Where do you see all this ending?
Sorry?
Where do you see this ending?
Where I see this ending?
Yeah, the outcomes.
Well,
what would you think would be the outcomes?
You can't see my smile, and of course it should not be less serious. But I smile a bit because it will never end. It has been a discussion for so many years. This actual Trump situation will end when three arguments will be used. The one is that until now, I'm very sorry to say it, but the Congress in the United States is sleeping, and we need to tell the Congress, the politicians, that they have to react towards Mr. Trump. And the second very important factor is, of course, the voters. The voters, many of them in America, has had no interest in Greenland, maybe nearly do not know where it is, but now they will feel what it means when Mr. Trump is getting in conflict both with NATO and with the European Union. And I see one thing more where it will end. In the European Union, we are certainly discussing economics with America. And here, the European Union is not the little kingdom of Denmark. It is strong. We have 450 million inhabitants, and we are economically as strong as United States. So but we do not want that, but if there should be an economical war, then it would be very tough for the voters of Mr. Trump. So I'm sure, as normal, we will find professional diplomatic ways, and I hope it will happen this week in 3 ways. We have today all the leaders of the European Union together. We have the NATO leaders together, and we have in Switzerland, in Davos, this week, Mr. Trump personally arriving and being in contact with all the leaders of Europe and other important countries in the world. And I think they have to agree that for the point, we are disagreeing for the point of time, but we have to sit around a table and discuss the substance.
Well, let's see what comes out of it. Tom Hoyam, the former Danish minister to Greenland, and the thought is, as Trump goes about threatening with increasing of tariffs, he, in fact, and his country are becoming increasingly isolationist or isolated in their very own way. Do you see that the same way? By the way, quick thought in terms of your comments. Besides that walk-off of Senegal, did you see that story about the ball boys? I don't know who they were fiddling with the towels behind the goalkeeper of Senegal. There were so many side issues yesterday. I'm really battling to understand all of that. Hey, welcome to the National Pulse.
Want to know how much money OUTsurance saves 35-year-old Zanai on her car insurance?
A whopping 1,180 Rand.
That's an incredible 1,180 Rand monthly saving on Zanai's 2017 Mercedes-Benz GLA. And the out bonus she'll get?
It is close to 6,500 Rand in 3 years if I'm claim-free.
Nice. How much money could OUTsurance save you? SMS OUT to 30754. That's OUT to 30754. Licensed insurer in FSP. TCs and information online.
I don't love going to school. I don't love sitting in a classroom with 50 other children. But I do love learning. Ngiyakuthanda ukufunda isiXhosa as a language. I do love getting good grades. I do love UCT Online High School because I do love my future. Apply online before the 26th of January.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
We're going to talk about that Van der Bijl Park Scholar Transport crash that killed 13 pupils. We'll talk about it after 4 o'clock, right? Let's talk about the Township Economy Report. The 2025 Township Economy Report found that township businesses are economically resilient and digitally aware, but outdated, with cash-heavy systems and weak local value chains. I'm very interested in what that really means and the implications that prevents growth, maybe. Annalene Dippenaar is the Chief Business Officer from Shop to Shop. Annalene, appreciate you joining us on the National Pulse.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Well, this report sounds very, very important. Tell me, first of all, the background to the reasons for the report.
This report gets generated annually just to give insights in terms of how the township economy is performing and how it's growing. And it provides valuable insights to the participants in this economy. For example, the suppliers, etc., that would typically operate in the more formal market. It provides them with insights in terms of how the township economy is, put together and how it actually operates and works.
Okay, so you've heard my intro. I mean, there's a couple of points I made, but of course you can tell me so much more. So perhaps in the few minutes we have, maybe some 5 key bullet points that have emerged that you'd like to share.
I think what is fairly important to understand is that there is a lot of demand currently already in the township economy. There is a lot of consumers that is currently transacting, and they are transacting within the townships. What is happening, however, is that in not all instances will the money that's being generated within the townships between the business and the consumer actually stay within the township. It very often happens that money will flow out to suppliers and wholesalers, etc., that is situated outside of the township, which means that this multiplier effect that you would typically have isn't really being achieved within the township economy when that money is being spent. And what would really be helpful in that instances is where there's a faster adoption of digital payments, as an example, to connect these businesses with other businesses, so that payments and ordering and accessing stock can actually take place in a more digital manner in order to connect different participants with each other.
Mm-hmm. And you're saying, if I understand you correctly, that the point about resilience is great, but many of the systems are outdated, which actually means that I think the costs to run their businesses would be higher because they just don't know the shortcuts. Would I be right in saying that?
What is quite interesting though is that if we look at the spending on let's call it a card payment device prior to COVID, there weren't a lot of card payment transactions that really happened or occurred prior to COVID. And then when COVID hit, there was a lot of pressure on the let's call it the cash market because the consumers couldn't really go to the ATM and draw cash, and there were also almost a fear of handing cash during the COVID pandemic. And then what COVID did do was to almost drive this adoption of digital payment and this acceptance of card payment devices. So what they are seeing is that there's a lot more adoption of card payment devices, as an example, within the township economy, which has now become part of the way that they do business. And there are more and more of these, let's call it fintechs and other providers that are providing systems to connect the small trader to the larger wholesaler, where he will then purchase his stock from, and where they can then make immediate payments and settlements. And by doing that, this trader actually builds up a trading profile. And by having this access to the trading profile, he can now access credit, as an example. So that's another, to go back to your first question, what is, a key insight is this adoption of digital payment systems, as an example, really formalizes these businesses and can give them access to credit, which they can then use to buy stock, and that just compounds the growth in the township economy.
Is it accurate to say that the fact that it's even called the township economy suggests that the township economy is very different to, let's call it, the city or the metropolitan economy?
We so often have this debate. Listen, we shouldn't be differentiating between the township economy and the formal economy because it's one economy within South Africa. But at the end of the day, when you look at the township economy, it replicates what's happening in Main Street city centre. You have your retailer, your trader, you have your hair salon, you have your butchery, you have your car wash, etc. So all those businesses actually exist within the township area. And again, there's a lot of these opportunities for different businesses to be established within the township economy. So yes, it's a totally different economy because it almost beats beats its own heartbeat, but it still replicates what's happening in the township, in the formal economy, when it comes to the services and the retail space that is available and how the consumers interact with those businesses. But again, with its own flavour, there's different products being provided within the township. That's not necessarily the way that it will be done in the Main Street city centre.
Just the last thing, maybe the consumer does what the consumer does, just makes the purchase. But how important is this information for the value chain in terms of service providers to the city economy and township economies? Meaning, should they be taking what you've just offered to say, hold it, we understand this better, we didn't know it before, we need to now do business with them in this way versus what we thought we should do?
No, 100%. I think an important point is that to stress is that consumer demand exists within the township economy. The consumers are spending the bulk of their money within the township economy. So that is happening already today. But to compound that effect of this money that is being spent and this value that's being created within the township, what we would need the suppliers and the participants to do is to actually create value within the township. So, for example, have your distribution centre within the township, have your supply chain within the township, your logistical providers, your employment, all of that. You stimulate keeping that R1 that's being spent by the consumer to be recirculated within the township economy. You will multiply the effect of that spending. So, at the end of the day, I think the ask or the recommendation to the suppliers would be to establish business within the townships in order to really compound that that the effect of the value that's being spent, and to grow that economy and create a bigger base for providing services.
Well, it's a good
and
point.
products.
Take a closer look at the township businesses. Annalene Dippenaar, Chief Business Officer from Shop to Shop. Thank you for your time. And that report is called the 2025 Township Economy Report. I suggest you just Google it. You'll find it all for you. Thank you for that, right? Okay, coming up next, the SFM News with Momentum. Those with financial advisors have a better shot at generational wealth. Speak to a Momentum accredited financial advisor for advice that meets your context.
Thank you, Ashraf. On the top stories, Ramaphosa calls for urgent reform to scholar transport, and private investigator Paul O'Sullivan subpoenaed by the ad hoc committee. For SFM News, I'm Ondalambana, and a very good afternoon. President Cyril Ramaphosa has highlighted the urgent need to reform the scholar transport system to ensure the safety of learners following the deaths of 13 learners in a crash involving a truck and a scholar transport vehicle near Vanderbijl Park in Gauteng. 3 other learners were critically injured and are being treated in hospital. Speaking during an oversight visit in Mpumalanga, Ramaphosa says he's devastated to hear about the tragedy.
It's a terrible occurrence. Our scholar transport system obviously needs to be well geared up to ensure that the safety of children is prominent. And those who transport our children, drivers, the vehicle, as well as their behavior on the road is such that it saves the lives of children. So I'm devastated myself to hear right at the beginning of the year that 13 children at one go have lost their lives.
Ramaphosa is in Mjajani, east of Malelane in Nkomazi in Mpumalanga, to assess the damage caused by the recent heavy rains. His visit comes 3 days after the government declared a national disaster over the widespread flooding. The rains damaged over 1,300 houses in Mpumalanga, and most are in the flood-prone Nkomazi municipality. Limpopo was also hard hit by the rains. The Mpumalanga government says it will need at least 2 billion rand to repair damaged infrastructure. Meanwhile, the search for 2 teenagers who are presumed to have drowned in the Silanti River at Mashishimale village outside Palaburu in Limpopo is expected to start this afternoon. Mahlatse Shai and Tsepo Shai were swept away while attempting to cross the Solin River with 2 other friends. One of the survivors, 18-year-old Mahlatse Shai, a cousin and namesake to the 15-year-old, says he tried to help but the currents were too strong.
I entered inside the water, then those water, then they take me, and when I was definitely arrived to help the people that they called me to get inside the water. I didn't arrive, they just go before I can arrive there. While they're going, they arrive at the middle of the rock. When I get out at the water, I saw the person who I came with near the bridge. Those water that was too fast. I tried to come up with another way to get him, then I didn't make it.
The ad hoc committee investigating allegations of criminal infiltration, corruption and political interference in the justice system has resolved to subpoena private investigator Paul O'Sullivan. His request to testify virtually has been vehemently rejected by the committee. It wants him to appear in person in Parliament. O'Sullivan has raised concerns around his security if he appears in person. Committee chairperson Mulapile Khanyane says there will not be dictated by O'Sullivan about which parties he will engage with when testifying.
The committee is very clear that he should physically come before this committee, and then that the committee reject any tendency that seeks to treat this committee as a separate political parties when it's a collective of parliament. So there is no way in which a witness can say, I'm going to appear before you, but I will not recognize so and so.
Prince Harry has arrived in court for a case he's bringing against one of Britain's biggest newspapers. The Daily Mail stands accused of hacking the prince's phone and using deception to obtain information. He has brought the case against the newspaper's publishers, Associated Newspapers Limited, along with the politician, a campaigner and several actors and music stars. The BBC's Katie Razel has the details.
They are alleging not just phone hacking, but also tapping landlines, blagging medical records and even bugging celebrities' homes. Associated newspapers say all these allegations, they say they're not just preposterous, but an affront to the hard-working journalists whose reputations and integrity are being wrongly traduced. Daily Mail publishers say the articles were never complained about at the time and came from responsible journalism based on legitimate sources.
Recapping the top story, President Cyril Ramaphosa has highlighted the urgent need to reform the scholar transport system to ensure the safety of learners following the deaths of 13 learners in a crash involving a truck and a scholar transport vehicle near Vanderbijl Park in Gauteng. I'm on Dilambara for SFM News headlines at 4:30.
And that news at 4 brought to you by Momentum. Momentum is part of the Momentum Group Limited, an authorised FSP and a registered credit provider.
They say the early bird catches the worm. Great advice, unless you're the worm. Generic so-called wisdom doesn't work for everyone, so I settle for a financial plan that's one size fits some. Momentum accredited financial advisors take the time to get to really know your unique situation. Advice meets your context. Momentum, your journey to success. Momentum is part of Momentum Group Limited, an authorised financial services and registered credit provider.
Final, and we bring you the latest from the Australian Open. Novak Djokovic had a dominant win, as well as victories for Iga Swiatek and Coco Gauff on day 2. Details around 4:30.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Well, listen, keep those comments coming because I certainly want to engage with you as soon as I can. We'll open the lines for live calls as soon as we get a chance. But you can voice note right away. We'll bank them. And wherever you are, in South Africa, in Senegal, in Morocco, in France, wherever you may be, anywhere around the world, in Trump land as well, or Greenland too. I'd love to know. That Trump story about the warning to the host of the Nobel Peace Prize, right? Saying, hey, I may not be so peaceful any longer. That's a true story. It is so bizarre. But should I be surprised? And then we often get listeners saying, Ashraf, you're being too hard on Donald Trump, isn't it? Right, let's talk about this story we touched on earlier on. 13 school pupils lost their lives in a tragic accident involving a scholar transport vehicle in Vanderbijl Park in the Vaal area, right? And that happened this morning. Preliminary information from officials at the scene indicates that the accident occurred on Fred Droster Road, also known as the R553, behind ArcelorMittal. Well, we know that there's been loss of lives. What we don't quite know is what actually happened, and maybe the other one is just why it is such a common recurrence. Matume Chilwani is the Education MEC in Gauteng. Matume, I appreciate your time. MEC, thanks for joining us.
It's welcome to listening to your listeners.
Thank you. This is a terrible story. I'm sure. Let's start with that. You may want to offer your condolences to the family and of the children and the schools they attended to.
No, definitely. Yeah. It's a really bad day for us as a department. This is actually, when we're looking at our books, one of the worst accidents we've had to experience as a department in the province. So this is a really terrible story for us.
Yeah. What do you understand as to what actually happened?
As things stand, the private scholar transport driver was trying to overtake multiple vehicles at a time. And if you look at the time, he was most probably late to drop off the learners because they were going to 5 different schools. So I'm sure he was trying to catch up time. And then as he was trying to overtake this number of vehicles, the truck came on the opposite direction because it's a two-way lane, came in the opposite direction, and then it was a head-on collision. So since then we've got around 13. Actually now I'm just waiting for the confirmation, the suspicion that also lost a 14th learner as well. So at this stage, it will mean all learners, if there's about 3 learners that were left to that were still alive in hospitals. And if this 14th confirmed, it will mean that there will be 2 learners left out of the whole.
Horrible story. I mean, here's the thing: the fact that the driver was late, I can understand that. And listen, by nature, when we're all late, we want to speed up. But the fact that he felt wise that he could overtake 3-4 cars to overcome his lateness because he wanted to meet a deadline and run the risk of dying himself. I mean, that should really trouble you, isn't it?
Indeed. I mean, it goes back to the regulation of the private scholar transport, of which I was speaking to my counterpart as well, that we need to really come up with ways to really strengthen this area, because as it is now, it's quite. I would say it's unstructured, because it's just a person with a vehicle and saying I can carpool your kids to school. That's all. Really, there's no.
And why is it unstructured? I mean, I understand that the Human Rights Commission had a briefing around the same time, ironically, as we'd heard about these deaths, right? Why has it been so unstructured for such a long time?
That's what I'm saying. It's an issue of policy and the removal of it. It's time where we really strengthen also the role that we play as a department, because upon such an incident taking place, we are also held accountable. That what have you done? What you should have done? You should have done that. But as things stand, our role has always been minimal with dealing with private scholar transport. So that's why we are insisting that we need to accelerate the review on how we regulate this particular sector.
And is the policy from a transport point or from a schooling point, or is this something that has to be developed jointly?
Jointly. It has to be developed jointly. I mean, I was saying, for instance, if you are to transport the public, you have to have I think it's a PDRP or something license. Why can't we have the same type of license designed for scholar transport? That if you are going to be transporting kids, this is the type of license you need to have as part of regulating who comes in and takes responsibility for the learners, because they tend to get that they're carrying precious cargo. They assume it's just any other commuters in their vehicle in some instances. So it's important that we look at such aspects to strengthen and ensure that also even those who need to participate in the sector, we need to also get to a point where you can't transport kids if you're not registered and the vehicle been registered and approved to transport vehicles. As things stand now, that is not happening. So I mean, we don't know the state of the vehicle, if the vehicle was roadworthy or not, if the transport driver had a license or not. So I mean, those are subjected to an investigation by the police, and this is type of things that we're supposed to be able to on hand respond. That because this car was roadworthy, this is the driver who was registered to transport the kids, and you see. So those are things that we're looking at the level of policy, that we need to get to that point, and urgently.
What about those, as you said now, 14 children have lost their lives, right? What sort of support do you provide for the parents and the families?
Of course, the first thing that we did was to dispatch our psychosocial unit to the parents and the learners, because they come from 5 different schools. So our team went to the schools. But more importantly, of course, we will sit down through the schools and the parents, the families, in terms of how best to support those particular families towards the laying of our kids. So this is but it's obviously that's subject to discussion upon families and schools representing ourselves. But psychosocial unit was dispatched already to schools.
Well, I'm glad that's the case. Let's just end with the transport story again. In terms of rules and policy, what would you like to see happen next as a matter of urgency?
Firstly, law enforcement is very important. I've always appealed that with the law enforcement agency, especially the traffic police, that they need to be strong and decisive around dealing with private scholar transport, even public scholar transport for that matter. If the vehicle is not roadworthy, rather have them remove the kids out of that vehicle and find a way of communicating with the parents of these children to come and fetch them, because the kids will be in unroadworthy vehicles. And that includes, in this case, when I was on the scene, I mean, I had one or two people were saying to me that last week there was an incident where they had to reprimand the driver on his reckless driving, and so I'm in charge. If they were indecisive, or maybe they would have arrested him or something, I mean, we'd be speaking a different story. So I want decisiveness from law enforcement to pull out any bus, scholar transport bus or vehicle that is not roadworthy, that should not be on the road. We'll take accountability of the children, because it's better to have the kids come late or tomorrow or the day after than not arrive at all at home, at school
absolutely.
as well. So
better late
we need
than
to be
late.
fair.
Better late than late. I think point well taken. But really, something has to happen. We can't have the same conversation again soon about the same type of things. But much appreciate your time, MEC for Education in the Gauteng province, MEC Matome Chilwane. This is now where we know that 14 now school pupils losing their lives this morning on their way to school. Just another day, but it was their very last day of their lives.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Right, there's developments regarding Action SA and their mayoral candidate, Xolani Khumalo. We'll get to that in a few minutes' time. In the meantime, there's lots of thoughts from you, which I need to pick up on a whole range of things. First of all, on the issue of scholar transport.
Afternoon, Ashraf. No, I would like to agree with the caller who mentioned the issue of schools being closed, especially around the township. A number of schools has been closed in Soweto. As a result, parents are opting to say, no, let me take my kid to another school. Then there's a transport issue involved. So if you can fix that as well, I think it might play a very, very crucial role in reducing Abu Malume who are reckless in this driving.
Well, look, I agree with you. The fact is, not just now, over the years, far too many children travel outside of their residential area to other schools because, like that thing, what's it, better life for all? They all think there's a better school elsewhere, and that's completely understandable, right? And that is one part of it, but it still doesn't stop. You could be 5Ks or 3Ks away from your school. If you're a lousy driver and you are prepared to cross a solid line and you're prepared to overtake 3 cars because you feel that's the way it is, it's going to happen even if you've got a kilometer to go. And that's happening far, far too often. Right. In fact, let's get to we're going to get to more calls just now, but for now, the Action SA's mayoral candidate for Ekurhuleni, that's Xolani Khumalo, has handed himself over to police in Katlehong. This is a very strange story. This is in connection to an assault charge opened against him in December. Action SA's national chairperson is Michael Beaumont, and he believes that he says the party is fully behind Khumalo. Why would that be the case? Let's find out what really happened with the Action SA's national chairperson, Michael Beaumont. Thanks for joining us, Michael. Appreciate you joining us on the National Pulse.
No, thank you very much. And let me tell you straight away why it's strange.
Yeah.
Action SA is shocked that the police in this instance have ignored the cries of communities who have referred to this individual who's made the assault charges as a drug dealer in Katlehong, peddling drugs to the children of that community, who was arrested by the police in a raid which included Xolani Khumalo with a very well-established work he does in this regard. And he was released without even being processed, notwithstanding the fact that he was found in possession of unlicensed illegal ammunition, and left the police station only to lay charges against Xolani. Now, it is shocking that the police have ignored the cries of communities to arrest and ensure this individual is prosecuted, but now choose to act on the word of this drug dealer in an assault charge against Xolani. That's why we stand against him, because when you choose a candidate for mayor like Xolani Khumalo, someone who kicks down the doors of drug dealers that are protected by the police, this is what comes along with the territory: police harassment and intimidation.
All right, let's understand. So you're saying he's being punished for being proactive and doing what the police themselves can't do?
Well, of course, and it's more than what they can't do, Ashraf. Let's call it what it is. There's a very well-established pattern in South Africa that everyone knows where the drug dealers are operating. They can point out the houses in their communities. But there is an established pattern of police protection and or involvement in the trade of drugs in many of these communities, which is precisely why when someone like Xolani Khumalo poses a threat to these drug dealers, it is acted upon by members of the police against him. It has happened before. This isn't the first time he's faced charges in this regard. And I think if we're going to be balanced in the way in which we do these things, we really need to consider that on the one hand, we have an individual who has fought for the rule of law in communities for a long period of time, and on the other hand, we have a person who deals drugs to children. And I don't think we should spend too long working out which of those two versions of events is credible.
Okay, having said that, now he's handed himself over. What happens next?
Well, I think it's important to stop there for a moment. He has handed himself over. He faces accountability openly. He's not a person who hides from it, and that's an important step. So he appeared in the Palm Ridge Magistrates Court today, where he was granted bail. And tomorrow morning, he will return to the campaign trail to talk about the service delivery issues facing the residents of Ekurhuleni because the work continues. He will reappear in court on the 18th of February, and I'm certain what will happen then is what's happened before, is that the NPA will end up withdrawing charges because ultimately there's no evidence.
What was the actual charge, just to be clear?
The charge was assault and grievous bodily harm. But again, this is the charge that was laid by the individual arrested on suspicion of drug dealing and ultimately arising from a raid which had taken place that had discovered the illegal ammunition that was being stored by this drug dealer in his home.
So you may there's no evidence about grievous bodily harm, but would you agree that, is there a chance, notwithstanding what you said about, the police service being compromised in any way, would you agree that whatever the good intentions of Xolani Khumalo is there a chance that he could get over enthusiastic and then involve himself in overreach to try and get into spaces that is just not his?
Not at all. I think it's very important to mention that Xolani has been involved in these kind of operations for a very long time. This isn't his first. He's done many of these before. These things are normally done in close concert with the police. This was, in fact, a police raid that Xolani was involved in a secondary capacity because he is the person who provides the intelligence that allows these raids to take place in the first instance. So there's no concern of that nature. But let us be clear, Ashraf, if we're going to be talking about what we should really be debating here, it shouldn't be about whether Xolani is too enthusiastic in the manner in which he deals with people who deals drugs to our children. It should be about the fact that the drug trade is taking place in our country, and we should be talking about that. We should be talking about drug dealers and police members who are co-opted into this trade, not trying to work out whether Xolani should be punished for doing what the police in this country are not doing.
Well, it's interesting. I was just going to raise it. I had the chat with the MEC for Education in Gauteng about, the 14 learners now we know who died this morning. It's like, how can that be allowed to continue? That's the real issue. In this case here, so how then do you deal with this ongoing drug peddling that is destroying so many communities? What do you think needs to happen that's not happening?
Well, there's got to be a clean out in the police. The police is highly compromised. The fact that members of the police know where these drug dealers are operating and they still operate with impunity shows that good cops are afraid to act because they know what will happen to them, and bad cops are involved. There's got to be a clean out, and that starts with political leadership. But how do you clean out the SAPs, Ashraf, when the president has $580,000 in his furniture? The police minister is currently the subject of the Madlanga Commission. And the examples just go on and on. We've got to start with political leadership that ensures that the police is operating within the law, that they are told to operate without fear or favor and without political interference therein, and that they are skilled and capacitated to do their jobs, because the dealers of drugs and the organized criminal syndicates operating in our country are highly resourced. They have a lot of intelligence in terms of their networks and how they operate. And right now the SAPs are far behind.
But isn't that the point, that the Madlanga Commission, never mind what you may have said earlier about the president, we can have that conversation separately, that there's a clear intent now to root out the mess that South Africa finds itself in with regard to police and compromised policing? Isn't that an important step?
Well, it's an interesting word you use, intent, because this isn't our first commission of inquiry. We had one called the Zondo Commission, which I think became a 7,000-page paperweight that hasn't resulted in any serious prosecution of a high-level politician in our country. And our fear is that the Matlanga Commission could well be heading in the same direction, because it has become the favorite pastime of our president before, and now under this GNU government as well, to use commissions of inquiry to appear to be doing things when in fact nothing really happens that's going to fundamentally change. We had an election in May last year. We now have this GNU coalition government. There were a bunch of parties that were supposed to read the Riot Act to say we will only be in this government if the following changes in our criminal justice system take place, and yet it seems very much like the old government.
Just lastly, I mean, you say you have this fear that it could be, Zondo Part 2, right, or 2.0. But is it beyond fear? I mean, do you have genuine reason to believe that no matter what, that nothing will come out of it?
Well, I think we've gotten to a point when it comes to President Ramaphosa that we're going to have to believe action when we see action. What we see in the space of action is statements like, "I'm shocked." We see commissions of inquiry. We see all manner of sleights of hand that are used to create the appearance that we are doing things, but we don't actually see things being done. We've just had an entire cycle of an NPA head come and go, who was supposed to be the new broom that swept the NPA clean, and yet nothing took place under the term of office of Shamila Batohi. And ultimately, I think President Ramaphosa's presidency is going to be characterized in the history books of our country as a president who came in with great fanfare, great excitement, wonderful jingles, but no action.
Okay, well, no action, says the chairperson of Action SA. Your point made. Michael Beaumont, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us here on the National Pulse. And by the way, just as we're talking, I'm in news now, and really, you can't believe this. There's a crash in Pinetown. It's being now over the news, and the story is that 9 learners have been injured. Thank goodness, not dying, but 9 learners injured in a crash in Pinetown in KZN. And we still think it's isolated. It's not.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, this comments from you. Text Ashraf, hi. Suggestions for South Africans. Can we dedicate a week where we look at some of the clauses in our constitution that cause havoc in the country and see how best we can amend them? So which clauses for you it comes from OJ, by the way, in Safest Crail, I think it is. Which clauses for you causes havoc? Clauses in the constitution causes havoc. That means it's havoc because of the clauses, not havoc because we don't implement in terms of what the clauses are. Hassan in Joburg, let's talk sport.
Hi, Ashraf.
Yeah.
Listen, man, I heard your comments regarding Senegal, what they should do. And, my sense was, I was going to talk about Gayton, the Minister of Sport, who's not been doing much for our poor communities, but that's another debate. So let me come to the discussion on Senegal.
Yeah.
I have noticed during this Moroccan AFCON, it seems that some of the teams really, really get bad decisions. Even Nigeria, they would pass certain judgments against them, cards and that, fouls that are permitted by others on them, but not on the other side. And I actually thought, there was a certain agenda. And the same thing I found with Senegal. Senegal were highly prejudiced. A few minutes before they got this controversial penalty, their goal was disallowed. And I think when that happens, the structure to get any form of fairness, it goes out of the window. And I think the protest was correct. The protest was correct, whether they should have lied down or the goalkeeper give them a free goal, because now everyone knows that this is what they were complaining about. This idea of fair play, when the rules are stacked against you and favoring the home team, is really bad. Really bad.
Well, interesting you make that point. So you're saying to make their point, them walking off the pitch and in fact not even coming back at all would have been the right thing to do, as opposed to what
No, I think the way it played out, as fate may have it, and the gods of rain and everything else helped.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy tried to do a Panenka and it failed, and I think the nerves has got a bit of him, because clearly, it all worked out so that the better team actually won. But I think that we've got a lot of healing to do here, because a lot of people don't regard Morocco and others as being part of Africa. Their attitude politically and otherwise suggests maybe there's some point they may have rejoined, I think, the AU and others.
Yeah.
But the idea of the political side and that, and I think a lot of the other commentators, and I've witnessed some on social media, basically regards Senegal as the African team and not Morocco.
All right. I mean, that's another cultural issue, and we don't have enough time for that. But just a quick one, Hassan, and I was having a chat with my producer, Temba, early on, that in that first goal, right, the goal that was disallowed, that my understanding of a VAR, the referee makes a decision. If VAR believes it needs to be overturned, they inform the referee, not the other way around. And that VAR head was the South African head. Then you get the penalty. In the same case there, the referee makes a decision not to give a penalty. It's the VAR head, right, that makes the call to say, Mr. Referee, we have grounds that we think you need to look at it again. Now we don't have enough time because we're on to news headlines, but that suggests, if I follow what you're saying correctly, that all referees are effectively compromised because countries have an agenda, and effectively they make sure they're compromised.
Ashraf, whether we like it or not, there is a home crowd bias that CAF and FIFA and others would like to see Morocco do well first and fifth. A good story, but I think it's not just for the game.
Okay.
That's all I'm feeling.
All right, maybe have another chat about the cultural issue some other time. Hassan, in Joburg, thank you for your time. Right, just gone for 30 years. The news hits with Ondela.
Thank you, Ashraf. 9 children have been injured after the driver of their scholar transport vehicle lost control and the vehicle crashed into a tree near Sania Primary School in Pinetown, west of Durban. Gold prices have risen more than 1% to above $4,670 an ounce, reaching a new record high. And Ugandan opposition party National Unity Platform has staged a demonstration outside the country's High Commission in Pretoria. A full update follows at the top of the hour with Greg Hoos.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound slow moving towards Boysons, the M1 northbound in Sandton, queuing towards Grayston Drive and Allendale Road eastbound in Klerkop has delays towards Keenoch Road. In KZN, a stationary vehicle on the N2 southbound after Queen Nandi Drive and a stationary vehicle on the N3 northbound after Paradise Valley. In Cape Town, the M5 southbound slow-moving towards Racecourse Road exit, Albert Road is slow-moving through Woodstock, and the M3 southbound slow-moving towards Rhodes Drive. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Right, Zai, we've been talking AFCON during sport, outside of sport. What do you want to start with?
I know, walk-offs, eh? We're not going to walk off here on this show, that's for sure. But I can tell you that walk-offs are treated seriously, Ashraf, because they undermine competition integrity. So despite lifting this Africa Cup of Nations title, Senegal now facing potential disciplinary action after leaving the pitch in protest of a late penalty decision. CAF has condemned the scenes and is reviewing all the footage with appropriate sanctions expected against any players or officials found at fault. FIFA President Gianni Infantino also labelled the behaviour unacceptable. Any punishment is likely to focus on individuals rather than stripping the team of the trophy. And speaking of individuals, this man stood tall last night in a final that was teetering on the edge of chaos. It was a decision that helped pull African football back from the brink. Senegal captain Sadio Mane now explains why he chose leadership over protest and why walking off the pitch is never an option on the continent's biggest stage.
Yeah, I think it's really, really bad. The football should not even stop for 10 minutes to come back. But what can I do? What can we do? I think, we just have to accept and deal it. I think the good things we came back and we played the game, and what's happened.
All right, let's bring it to home now. Stellenbosch FC coach Gavin Hunt has made it clear he will not give priority to league football over the Nedbank Cup and the Confederation Cup, despite his new team languishing in 14th place on the Betway Premiership log at the halfway stage. The mentor says he will play a full-strength team in all matches. Teliza away to Sekhukhune United in their first game of 2026.
you cannot prioritize things in football. I think it leads to you can get caught with your pants down. So let's try and concentrate on the next game, which is Tuesday. Let's go to the next game after that. If you start thinking, well, CAF is not important, or Nedbank's not important, or this game's not important, and that happens. You see teams change. People get rest. I won't rest people if I feel obviously they really got to be tight for me to rest. You know what I mean? Rotation and those type of things. Obviously, within reason. You know what I'm saying? But I think it's important just calm down and concentrate on the next game.
On to rugby, despite the disappointment of falling short, the Lions' European campaign ended with resilience rather than regret. Captain Frank Horn says while the margins didn't go their way on the night, the effort and the lessons from a tough contest in France will serve the squad well going forward.
Playing until the last whistle, maybe 1 or 2 goals in that last phase could have gone our way in terms of a penalty in front of the post. But besides that, I think the character shown and the way we could adapt to conditions and our style really impressed me. And then still to be able to play some really good rugby by doing all of that.
And finally, tennis action at the Australian Open. Novak Djokovic has begun his bid for a record 25th Grand Slam title in emphatic fashion. The 10-time champion cruised past Spain's Pedro Martinez in straight sets to record his 100th career win at Melbourne Park. In the women's draw, the world number 2 Iga Swiatek and the 3rd seed Coco Gauff both advanced comfortably in straight sets. Now, day 2 also produced several upsets with seeded players like Felix Auger-Aliassime, Emma Navarro, Yuri Lehechka and Sofia Kenin all exiting the tournament early. And that's my cue to exit for now. I'll be back top of the hour for the National Pulse. I'm Zai Khan.
And talking about queues, Senegal had a queue to exit and then a queue to enter again. And I wonder whether you would agree from a listener point, whether Hassan's point is correct, that they had to threaten to stop the game and then get coerced back, but it was part of a plan that just worked out well. Now we know the issue of poor refereeing with home ground favours, not just Morocco, but across the world, must stop. Do you see that in the same way? Do add your comments. I'll pick it up in a moment.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Lots happening locally and globally. Of course, Davos on the way as well. Or starting today with me with all those numbers is Makwe Masilela, Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Makwe?
Afternoon to you, Ashraf, and to the listeners. Ashraf, last week we ended the week flat. Also, the rand was flat. We also opened flat this morning. And seemingly, we are experiencing what we saw unfolding this time last year. Markets were concerned about tariffs, and now the very same worry is back on our radar screens, as Trump said he will impose an additional 10% import tariffs from the 1st of February on goods from 8 European nations. That's until the U.S. is allowed to buy Greenland. I guess one can expect a drama at Davos. And by the way, U.S. markets are closed for a holiday, and China's Q4 GDP slowed to 4.5%, the weakest in 3 years, but their full-year economic growth was met. That was a 5% target, and the rand is stable as stronger than expected U.S. economic data lowered expectation of early interest rate cuts, leading the dollar to firm up, but high commodity prices working in favor of the rand. And locally this week we'll be getting the November mining production data, the December consumer inflation, and the November retail sales. And the likes of safe havens are at record highs, even copper approaching $1,300 a ton, and that's at the back of a weaker dollar, all because of the resurfacing of global tariffs concerns. Oil prices fell as civil unrest in Iran subsided, reducing the likelihood of a U.S. attack that could disrupt supply from the major producer, while traders also track the escalating standoff that's over Greenland. And we see Brent crude is down 0.3% at $63 a barrel. Yellow metal surged to all-time highs, and as on increased safe haven demand, extending last week's strong rally. Gold is up 1.5% at 4,663. Platinum up almost 2% at 2,365. Ashraf, global markets sink at the back of U.S.-Europe turmoil, but the JSE is flat, and we've been held by our resources, which are up 1.5%. The rand is still flat flat, 16.40 to the US dollar, 22.02 to the pound, and 19.10 to the euro.
Right, perfect. Thanks for that, Mark. We'll connect again tomorrow. And don't forget, an hour of the markets coming up 6 to 7 this evening.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
I was looking at a picture just by the way of the Moroccan player, what's his name, Brahim, right? He finished top goal scorer, although he didn't score in the semi and the final. And of course, you know, that Manenka penalty that he was like bizarre one. Anyway, top goal scorer, he got the golden boot, and there's this picture of himself with the FIFA boss, and he looks distraught. I mean, he was in tears, right? Anyway, there's this James Knowlton has tweeted saying, if you don't want it. So this is the picture of the FIFA boss and Brahim with the golden boot, and the golden boot recipient distraught, and James Knowlton saying, if you don't want it, I know a guy in America who'll take it. I thought that was hilarious. Okay, Mike in Newlands, hi.
Yeah, hello, Ashraf. Yes, just trumping away there. I'm actually more concerned than I am about Trump, but about the lack of coverage we seem to be giving to Iran. And I'm also just wondering, where is Durko in this whole thing? And why are we not hearing, we've got, I believe, so far 3,000 people are dead in Iran. And I think 15,000 have been arrested. I know that there's 2 or 3 lined up to be hung in the next day or two. I know that there's a national appeal out for them. But Durko and the South African government is saying absolutely nothing. And the reason I'm raising it, Ashraf, is because there's an interesting article in the Sunday Times where they likened the situation in Iran very much to it was when South Africa was under apartheid. You know, in Iran, you've got a minority government there. It's not a Muslim country, but it's run primarily by Muslims, or 100%. The Ayatollah Khamenei there is obviously full-on hardcore Muslim, and Muslim Brotherhood's deeply involved, and yet the people are, in fact, only 32% Muslim.
No, I think you're wrong about that factually. That last part.
Oh, am I?
Completely wrong.
What do you think it is?
Look, I'm guessing. So don't hold me to it. But if this was a quiz question and they said predict how many people of the Muslim faith reside in Iran, I would probably say 90%. And the least,
okay,
I would say 80 at the least. That's fine. Yeah.
Challenge you on that, Ashraf. I did some research because when it first came up, I must admit I was a little surprised as well, because I really did think it was a completely Muslim
But look,
country.
your point I take. Let me just tell you about the Durko thing, because we need to move on. So, I mean, we had 1 or 2 interviews last week. We then commented about the Durko statement they issued. I thought it was pretty mild, just my honest opinion about it, because whereas it's a bit unclear who's doing what, there's a lot of speculation about who's meddling and who isn't. I think what's not unclear is that people have died in numbers. That I think we must concede, right? Having said that, I think I can't speak on about other shows, but we have been hamstrung last week when the commissions start again. I must tell you, it's a conversation we have as a production team. When we have the ad hoc commissions, we find 2/3 of the show then gets taken and dedicated to the commissions, which then limits our ability to be able to cover other things, which today is a day off. Tomorrow we're back to that again. Yeah.
Yeah, Ashraf, I hear you 100%, but I want to comment on Durko. You know, there were 7 Palestinians shot by Hamas in a town square in Gaza. About 3 weeks ago. It's on live. It's on TV. If you want to go and watch it, it's the most horrendous sight. They took 7 Palestinians, killed them in cold blood in front of women and children. And Durko has yet to make a statement about this. And I mean, when Hamas goes around killing its own people, Durko says absolutely nothing. So I really do think we need to call them out. And no matter what comes up next week or the week after, Durko needs to come and account on behalf of South Africa, not just for the average show. They
point taken. I'm unaware of that last one. But I mean, let me put it this way: for every one, and I'm not suggesting it's okay, for every one of these mass killings, you'll find the counter argument about mass killings from the Israeli side, Mike. And I don't think Durko can actually issue a statement every single day these things happen, because the frequency is just ridiculous. Mike and Newlands, thanks for that. But yeah, we do need to cover more, and I think we are hamstrung to a degree, and I think most of the shows are. But there's no question about it. It is a huge issue that we absolutely must pay attention to, right? Okay, more thoughts from you. And so you heard that story about Pinetown, 9 learners injured. I mean, really?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. The driver of a taxi which killed me children is a useless driver, and there are a lot of them like that. They don't care. They drive as if they are carrying sacks of sand. They are reckless. I don't know what type of driving schools they went to. They are useless, I'm telling you. Here in Durban, they do the same thing. Stephen Durban.
Thank you. Well, I tell you, one of the conversations we was having with our technical team here off air was that there's just far too many drivers who don't know how to drive. And it's not a case of which driving school they went to. It's like, did they actually pass their license? Because there's been that. And I think, I don't have the facts and figures, but anecdotally, there's a sense that there are many, many people who drive on our roads with effectively no license. Never mind, they've got a document to prove that they have a license.
Afternoon to you, Ashraf. Let us be frank, 100% honest, and not be spineless. The truth is we are on the verge, a very thin verge of a third world war. It's imminent, it's just coming, it's only a matter of time. So, you can see the signs are all over there. I don't know if you've missed it or for some reason why is it not being mentioned, because it's also a big deal. The chief advisor to Vladimir Putin last week spoke to Tucker Carlson on his show there. And is issuing serious warnings to Europe, especially Germany and Britain, to say if they are continuing to push this war via Ukraine, if it doesn't abate in the next 2 years, Europe will be punished severely. I don't know if you've missed it. Anyway, this is Mabena in Mpumalanga.
Thank you. In fact, I didn't miss it. I heard that, and that is why you're right. There's a lot that's going on. And I must say, for you and I and others too, it is so difficult to understand what the truth is behind so many things, right? So what's the truth behind Greenland?
Yeah, Ashraf, in regard to Donald Trump wanting to invade Greenland, yeah, he takes that from Russia. He takes that also from China wanting to invade Taiwan. And then, also Hitler, you see, started all these, wanting to invade all the countries near Germany. So this power is in their DNA, I think. Thanks, Willie in Kuma.
Thanks for that, Willie. And by the way, I did a quick ChatGPT research on Iran and its populations. I was being kind and I say 80%. So here's the numbers. It says the Muslim population of Iran, Mike says 30% or thereabouts. It says 99%. And of the 99%, around 90% plus belong to the Shia arm of Islam. The balance belongs to the Sunni arm, and as you may know, that the Sunni arm represents about 10% of the world Muslims, but they just happen to be dominating in one country, and they have their own persuasions, but that's in Iran, right? So there we are, that number, 99, whether it's 90 or 99, that's where it is. Right, let's talk about, the flooding issue we've been speaking about, and the impact and therefore the state of emergency is one thing, but it also has had an issue, and I've often wondered about the massive flooding in Kruger Park, and I know people have not been able to go because many of the camps are shut, but also, what about the animals too, right? JP Lowe is with me, SANParks Head of Communications and a spokesperson. JP, thanks for your time. Thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Ashraf, your voice is quite soft, my side. But I'll try to soldier on much as I possibly can.
All right, much appreciated. Hopefully this is better now. So, thanks for joining us. My question to you is we know that many of the parks were closed last week. What's the position now?
Well, look, we had closed for day visitors. Say some 24 hours ago, we were hoping that today we'll open for day visitors. But then there was the rains overnight, and we are now at the point where we've introduced the gate quota, right? So it means that only a limited number of people are allowed into the park at the moment. And I must emphasize that it's primarily in the southern parts of the park, because the northern part of the park really remains inaccessible, and all the gates that part of the park are closed. So a gate like Paul Kruger Gate, for example, you are able to use it at the moment if you want to be able to access Kruger National Park.
All right. So day visitors now being allowed. What about those that needed to stay over?
If you've booked at any of the camps that we said that access is allowed, that being Skukuza, Pretoria Skop and Bergendal, there you'll be able to still access the park as an overnight stay. But otherwise, what we've been appealing to everybody is to look at whether we can't change the date of their stay, or otherwise then consider whether we need to cancel. And if you want us to consider those kinds of changes to your booking, you use the number 012 428 9111. That's 012 428 9111. Our reservation officials will be able to assist you there.
All right. What about and what is the state of the park right now? Meaning, for the park, it's less about sightseeing, but actually being able to observe animals, right? What's the state of the animals?
Animals adapt quite efficiently. I think even sometimes much better than the South African Weather Service, even though we, of course, depend on the Weather Service as well to give us predictions, because they can already tell that storms are coming, and they will then move to higher ground, to more safer places. So we are not really in a place where we are quite worried about the animals. From our part, our records tells us that both in terms of human fatalities and just even in terms of wildlife overall, we haven't really had any negativities to talk much about at the moment.
Okay, so you haven't lost human life because of the flooding in the Kruger Park, and the same applies to animals too?
No, we certainly haven't. And in that respect, Ashraf, I must recognize our teams there on the ground, because, where airlifting was required, that was done, where guests had to be moved timeously because floods were expected in some areas. All of those sorts of intervention was done. And some of the things we did, such as saying that day visitors no access, were all really precautionary measures, right? And it then put us in the point where those kinds of interventions have led to an outcome where you wouldn't have fatalities as we have it now.
Okay, point taken. Thanks for clearing all of that up. JP Lowe, SANParks Head of Communications. Thanks for your time here on the National Pulse.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, comment. I think one of the key things I've said this year is, like, whatever we talk about, react. Michael Beaumont's position regarding Action SA and the candidate, the mayoral candidate, Xolani Khumalo, and his thoughts on that. Also, his comments about the Madlanga Commission and just any other commission. Feel free to comment. Kruger Park, and then again, transport and licensed drivers and unlicensed drivers carrying our children to schools. How do we navigate around that? Further comments about Senegal, if you're up for that, and then also around Iran. In fact, here's one about Iran.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Mike Newlands is missing the point. Iran is 90 to 95% Islam, predominantly Shia. Those are the numbers. Mike cannot just come on air and mislead the whole public. Mloni, Khumalo, and Peter Maritzburg. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I did say conservatively it can't be less than 80, probably close to 90. In fact, you're right. The official stat says 99%. So even if they're outdated by 2%, I mean, that's where it is. And there's more. Naveen saying Ashraf Mike is a typical Israeli Nazi sympathizer. Are they still using Hamas as a scapegoat for killing and sniping children? People with this view must accept they are happy with the murder of children. From brutal stuff. That's according to Naveen in Devon. Well, you have your opinions clearly, and there's a range of opinions on that. Why do the high priests, the kings of Iran, abuse women, execute them if they don't cover themselves head to foot? What a cruel religion, says this one person. The Christian God is love and cares for women, unlike others. How cruel. So that's another point. And of course, there's a diversity of opinions, as you can pick up, right? Well, what about Senegal?
Ashraf, Willie in Kuma. Ashraf, despite all what happened with Senegal. The Senegalese were on top form. Really, this game or that tournament, really, it was actually headed for them. They were on fire. They deserve that particular win. Thanks, really, here in Kuma.
I think there's no question they deserved the win. I think they were the better team, and they were even very, very good in the semi-final. And I watched most of the big games, so completely concur with you on that one. And what about the Moroccan goalkeeper's saves that he made? Wow. Zwe in KZN, go for it.
Hello, Ashraf, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. You go for it. You're live.
Hello?
Yeah, you're live on the National Pulse. Go for it.
Yes, Ashraf. Sorry, man. I'm sorry. Maybe it should be my network. You see, Ashraf, what I want to talk about is that we are having a government that is not willing to listen to us. And now this government that is not willing to listen to us as South Africans, they want to regulate our Christianity and everything like that. But I don't hear saying that they want to regulate other religions, but they want to regulate Christianity. Maybe if they can start regulating the borderlines, start cleaning these people who are illegally in South Africa, who are foreigners, maybe starting to clean themselves in the cabinet, because everything that is happening within this South African place of ours, it is being done by the foreigners. Omotoso wasn't known that he was here in South Africa. Now, you tell me, if they want to regulate Christianity, why didn't they know that Omotoso was here illegally? Why didn't they know that this Malawian guy who ran away whereas they were criminal, all lawmen in South Africa, but he ran away and went back to Malawi. Now they are attacking Christianity. Okay. Why is that?
All right, your point is made. Listen, on the issue of other religions, firstly, I've certainly been on WhatsApp groups, and I think all religions in South Africa are very concerned about what we've just heard about, an attempt to sort of manage the faiths. We had a chat about it. We need to do more. In terms of linking that to, foreign nationals in the border, I mean, they're really two different issues. There's two different departments that will deal with it, and one is not in any way linked to the other. That means if they are allowing people to slip into the country illegally, that's a border control and a policing problem, not one of faith.
Okay, I do hear you, my brother Ashraf. I do hear you, but how can you regulate spiritual gift? Because this is all about spiritual gift. When I'm gifted, then who can regulate that except God?
Look, my understanding, listen, I'm not the expert on this. What they're trying to regulate is like, if you have a religious, let's call it a church or a mosque or whatever. We're talking Christian at the moment. I understand that they would want to have them they want to have them all registered, so that that means you and I can't just open up a place of worship on our own and raise funds without some sort of a records. That would be the reasoning behind it, and there could be others. Okay, I don't think it's a base of. I don't think it's about controlling your faith. They're actually teaching you what you must believe in, not at all. But hey, listen, we had that chat in December. Maybe we'll revisit it again.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Zwe. Thank you so much. Right. Okay. More about scholar patrols. Yeah.
Hi, Ashraf. Louis from Pretoria. Look, man, Ashraf, I think Steve from Durban is out of order. You cannot say the driver or the drivers are useless when you don't know the story. You don't know what happened. Even if he was overtaking 5 or 6 cars, but you cannot say the driver is useless. You don't know the driver. You can make a mistake as a person. You cannot say... I mean, this is a deadly mistake, I understand, but you cannot say the driver is useless. You don't know the guy. Sometimes we must get our fact right.
All right, but you see, I hear you, but if it's very clear that he actually was overtaking 3 cars in a row, he may not be useless, but as your words, he then made a deadly mistake, which, as any driver knows, you just can't do that, can you? Right, there's a comment about, again, about driving rules. Yeah.
Hi, Ashraf and the SFM. Ashraf, I think the government must come in with a strategy to say you need to qualify to drive in the public transport. It doesn't matter the trucks, your behavior and so on and so on. They need to go and then test you. You cannot drive in the people in the taxi, hanging the hands outside driving like 140 speed, 120 on the 80 zone. So we need maybe to come in with the taxi drivers, the school children, the drivers, they need to qualify. They need to be tested before.
Okay, got that. Thanks again. Reaction from you coming in all the time, and continue with your reaction by calling in live, by sending us a WhatsApp comment, by tweeting out as well, and also posting on Facebook. Either way, we'll pick it all up if you tag SFM Radio. Right now it's 5 o'clock. In the hot seat with the news is Greg.
Thank you, Ashraf. 9 learners injured in KZN crash, and Ugandans demonstrate outside the High Commission in Pretoria. Good day to you. 9 learners have been injured after the driver of their Scholar transport vehicle lost control and crashed into a tree near a primary school in Pinetown, west of Durban. ALS paramedic spokesperson Gareth Jameson.
It's believed that a single vehicle carrying 9 school children on their way home somehow lost control and collided with a tree. 9 of the children are being attended to by ALS paramedics with injuries ranging from minor to moderate. Once the injured children have been stabilized on scene, they'll be transported to various hospitals for the further care that they required. The scene is a little bit chaotic at the moment whilst frantic parents make their way through to the scene, and traffic is congested as multiple ambulances are in attendance.
President Cyril Ramaphosa has highlighted the urgent need to reform the Scholar transport system to ensure the safety of learners following the deaths of 13 learners in a crash involving a truck and a Scholar transport vehicle near Thunderbale Park south of Johannesburg. 5 other learners were injured, some seriously. Ramaphosa was speaking during an oversight visit in Mpumalanga.
It's a terrible occurrence. Our Scholar transport system obviously needs to be well geared up to ensure that the safety of children is prominent. And those who transport our children, drivers, the vehicles, as well as their behavior on the road is such that it saves the lives of children. So I'm devastated myself to hear right at the beginning of the year that 13 children at one go have lost their lives.
In other developments, flights in and out of Kruger and Mpumalanga International Airport, Nelspruit and Mbombela have resumed following morning delays due to bad weather. Frustrated passengers were told that flights to and from the airport would take off later. Heavy rains have hit in Mpumalanga and Limpopo since last week. Gold prices have risen more than 1% to about $4,670 an ounce, reaching a new record high. The surge came as investors flocked to safe haven assets following US President Donald Trump's announcement of new tariffs on European nations. Over the weekend, he threatened to impose a 10% tariff on nations opposing his plan to annex Greenland. Currency strategist Andre Salia.
So he's changed the whole dynamic of how things operate throughout the world, and definitely moving far away from traditional diplomatic ways of doing things and more of a I'll force you to do as I want you to do.
Ugandan opposition party National Unity Platform staged a demonstration outside the country's High Commission in Pretoria. The party says it rejects the results of the recently concluded elections in Uganda. The party's members in South Africa say they do not recognize Yoweri Museveni as the president. Museveni was declared the winner of the 2026 presidential polls, securing a 7th term as the country's leader. The party's coordinator in South Africa is Richard Kamya.
We don't recognize the results pronounced by the Abakama in the recent concluded elections back in Uganda. There is enough evidence all over the country. There is enough evidence all over the internet for the election being rigged. We have the military running away with ballot boxes. We have the military ticking ballot boxes. We have a whole polling area in the western region where electoral officers were ticking the bottom of that ballot box.
Top story, 9 children have been injured after the driver of their Scholar transport vehicle lost control and the vehicle crashed into a tree in Pinetown, west of Durban. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Huss.
And I'm Zai Khan. Let's get to your sports, and it's soccer. CAF's handling of the Africa Cup of Nations final has come under scrutiny after Morocco were awarded the Fair Play Prize despite widespread controversy. Meanwhile, in rugby, the Stormers could receive a major boost ahead of their coastal derby against the Sharks. We'll have the details around 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N3 northbound in Bedfordview slow moving on the link to the N12 east at Giluli's interchange. The N12 westbound in Lenasia has a crash that's near the R558 Protea Glen exit, and Mabopane Highway westbound in Pretoria has a crash reported at the Hairpin Bend. In KZN, the N3 eastbound queuing towards Spaghetti Junction and a stationary vehicle on the N2 southbound at Umhlanga Road. In Cape Town, Marine Drive outbound queuing between Milnerton and Sunset Beach, and the N7 Jakes Havel Drive southbound queuing towards Voortrekker Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you.
You can become a victim of a legal problem: wrongful arrest, assault, uncontested divorce, rental disputes, maintenance matters, or labor problems. It can happen to you. Clientele Legal provides tough professional lawyers for an affordable monthly premium. Our legal team is standing by to assist you 24 hours a day. Join today. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
What if your child could achieve better academic results in 2026? At Teneo School, they can. Our smart school system tracks every learner in real time and helps teachers spot gaps early. The results? With over 3,500 successful Teneo School matriculants, learners improve their average marks by 12% in the first year. Access affordable private schooling, no restrictive entry, fees starting from 3,000 Rand per month. Enroll now for 2026 at teneoschool.co.za. That's TENEO school.co.za.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
There is absolutely no question that this issue of the school learners being driven then to their deaths today, just so unacceptable. 13 initially, we now know it's 14. So 2 learners at the moment of the 16 have, at this point in time, while they've escaped death, and we just pray that would be the case. The others all having died. I had a chat early on with the MEC for Education in Gauteng, Matumi Chelwane. He believes that there has to be a rethink in terms of policy, combining transport and education around the transporting of learners to schools with these, public transport, taxis and so on. If you want to catch that podcast, by the way, just listen to it. Go to safm.co.za. You'll find it. And I also had a fascinating chat with Tom Hoyen, Denmark's last minister for Greenland, by the way, in the 1980s. He gave his thoughts on, Denmark, Greenland, Donald Trump. If you've missed it, well, don't miss it, but at least get the podcast and then listen to it and share it amongst your network. I'm sure they want to know all about it. We'll talk in a minute or two about Northwest University, well, more than a minute, of course, becoming the first in South Africa to adopt AI policy. That comes up just now. But let's talk about the human story around the loss of lives of now what we know as 14 people. The SABC News reporter Tato Letsaba, he was at the Sebokeng mortuary with family members, naturally completely distraught. Tato, thanks for joining us on the National Pulse on a terrible day.
It's a terrible day indeed, and I can't say good afternoon, Ashraf, but however, good afternoon.
Thank you. Well, we understand the context. So what was it like? I mean, you're a journalist, you cover stories, and then some stories are just worse than others. This has got to be one of them. Not 1 or 2 learners, but like now we know it's 14 learners. You've engaged with the family, I understand. I mean, share whatever you think we need to know.
Ashraf, what I can tell you, families are swimming in pool of pain. They couldn't contain themselves. Pain was ravishing. We understand that there's this one particular pupil who passed away. She was in grade 8. Today was her first day at the school. first day in the transport, and now the information coming in, we can't confirm this, but sources say the driver also has unfortunately passed away. We spoke earlier on, a few minutes ago, to a mother who said she went in that ward to confront the driver who took away her only daughter. We understand that a lot of the kids, their tongues were out, their body parts were ripped apart. We know that intestines were even showing. So, yeah.
Sure.
And there are allegations surfacing that the 23-year-old who was the driver had no license, and the owner of the transport is actually a chairman of Scholar Transport within the region of Val.
Sure. And just to get the transport part out of the way just for the moment, the allegation is that that the driver was running late for school because he had to go to 6 schools, and therefore at the time of the accident sort of overtook 3 cars in a row with oncoming traffic and then crashed into a truck. I mean, how accurate is that?
From the eyewitnesses that we spoke to, he said around about 7 o'clock when he was cycling, he saw this crash already happening. So you are right, perhaps he was rushing because schools usually start at 7:15, some schools 7, some 7:30. So that may be the case based on what we heard from one of the eyewitnesses.
Yeah, and the fact that, can we conclude that he was overtaking, overtook 3 cars and then obviously knocked the truck?
That can be confirmed because when we spoke to reliable sources within the police force, they say the car was definitely traveling more than 100 kilometers per hour. Judging by how fatal the crash was, you'd know that the taxi was divided into 2, and there's one survivor who was narrating the story as well.
Sure. And 100 k's in what zone? Do you know?
This is zone 6.
No, but in terms of kilometers, what was the maximum speed allowed in that area?
I cannot confirm that. I'll be lying if I were to answer
understandably so. Tell me more then about the families. I mean, you gave me some thoughts and you described some issues horrifically. Are there any other further anecdotes you can share? And what do they do next? I mean, besides being distraught, there's also a burial that's going to take place. Would it be together? Is it early days? Anything you need to tell us?
So as we speak right now, we are outside our home in Zone 6. We believe this is the family that lost their daughter who was just getting ready for her high school. What we've been told is that she's been looking forward to attending school, especially starting a new chapter. On the first day, it was taken away. We're going to visit another family in Zone 6 where we understand the household lost 2 kids. 2 kids in one home. So the parents, what I can tell you, words are not doing justice. We've seen tears flowing and frustration. Like I earlier said, that there was this one particular mother who went to the ward just before the driver passed away to confront him about what happened. And also we understand that they are gathering, some families are gathering at Assembly's Church to hold prayers for families that have been completely shattered. We tried to rope in some families. They were not having it.
What about, funeral arrangements? Is that too early to talk about now?
We are yet to find out about the funeral arrangements. As you know that the morgue, the bodies of these kids haven't gone to the mortuaries that will be responsible for the burial. They're still at the Sebokeng Government Hospital mortuary.
Okay. Any final thoughts you may want to share?
For now, that's all we have.
Okay. Tato Letsaba, thank you for much. A terrible story to cover. You don't want to do things like this, but somebody
Steve.
Somebody has to tell the news, and you've done that, Tato Letsaba. Thanks for your time, SABC News reporter, covering the story now of what we know at this accident around in the Vaal, Van der Bijl Park. 14 people now died, and according to what Tato said, that in fact now news coming through that the driver himself has died as well. What a terrible, terrible story. Right, we have more to talk about, maybe some good news about AI and the Northwest University, but there's also your thoughts as well. I'll pick up on that in a moment.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Right, so with me, Gareth Jamieson, who's an ALS paramedic spokesperson. Gareth, hi.
Hi there, how are you doing?
I'm very good indeed. Right, go for it. What do you want to say?
So, just with regards to the accident that occurred, Scholar Transport also in Pinetown.
Yes,
so
we heard about
it?
nine injuries, right? Yeah.
Yes, correct. So, a single Scholar Transport vehicle somehow lost control and collided with a tree in Pinetown area. This obviously after the devastating accident in Johannesburg. Fortunately, and the one we attended, there was no fatalities. However, unfortunately, it's quite common. These Scholar Transports aren't being involved in collisions. So, yeah, we did attend to the 9 scholars, aged between about 6 and 10, and who had sustained moderate or mild to moderate injuries before they were transported to various hospitals for the further care.
Yeah. And in terms of the losing control, can you tell us more about that?
So obviously, it's a form part of a SAPS investigation, and the driver tells us what he wants us to hear, if I may say it bluntly like that. So, obviously we ask what happened, how it happened, and, people just normally tend to tell us, oh no, we lost control of the vehicle. It has been raining a bit here today in Durban and surrounding, but, that at the point of the accident wasn't raining. So, unknown exactly what was the cause. I can't confirm if he was not focused or busy on something on the phone or something, but obviously SAPS will be investigating further.
And in terms of the injuries, how bad are the injuries?
Well, fortunately, and I say fortunately, it's not pleasant any child being hurt, but they weren't seriously injured. They were in one of these 7-seater vehicles, which is the first issue, as there was 9 of them as well. And they had sustained various injuries, whiplash, headaches, concussions, but no, fortunately, on the scene, we didn't find any life-threatening critical injuries.
Okay, well, thanks for clearing that up, Gareth Jamieson. Thank you for your time. Gareth is an ALS paramedic spokesperson, and it was there at the Pinetown Scholar Transport accident. Driver losing control, bad weather, maybe a different story. Thank goodness, 9 people injured, but thank goodness they all seem to be fine. Right? Okay, there's more thoughts from you. One of them around that conversation about the Action SA.
Good day, Ashraf. Man, it looks like on that one of Kolani, man, looks like our government is protecting the drug dealers. Honestly, they're protecting the drug dealers. If you can check the drugs that he busted there, they worth a lot of money. So now they want to stop Kolani.
Okay, that's how you see it, right? Here's one about, we spoke about Western Cape violence earlier.
Ashraf, good afternoon. I'm Takatayo in Landi location. I'm waving it off in Vava. Please, government of South Africa, our people are dying in our streets. They are being killed in this extortion in the Western Cape, in Umtata, in Gauteng, all over South Africa. Why don't you deploy some of the units in the defense force that are not deployed in Congo and Mozambique? Oh, government of South Africa, when are you going to hear our calls? Oh, Yini government of Ramaphosa, we are calling upon you, please have a shame on these people of South Africa.
Point shaken. And there's another about, let me get that right, sorry. Right, here's another comment. No, okay, there we are.
Good afternoon, Ashraf, and your team. Ashraf, man, I want to ask you something. 2026, they are going to allocate budget again from those municipalities who busy looting money, especially our Northwest municipality. We don't have municipality in Northwest. Those guys, they are looting money. Our government, they are thinking, well, how can you put money to something that is not generated? Because of that money, they loot it. and then there is no accountability. Like they managed to steal 11 billion in City of Matosan. I'm the one who fighting this man. I don't know. Today, Kokta, they are there. I'm waiting for the report of Kokta because we need that money. It's a lot, 11 billion. We can't keep quiet. KPSC, Matosan.
Thanks, Percy. And you clearly have not kept quiet because you feel strongly about it. So thank you for that, right? Here we are.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. This is Matebula. Ashraf, it is so difficult. A very, very big crisis that had happened there by Val. 14 kids is not a child play. But what can we say? Condolences to the parents, condolences to everyone that knows those kids. But why are we taking our kids so far away from us? There is schools around us and all that. People talk about quality education. Quality education, it means is private school. That's a question. We can never kill our kids each and every year like this. This is Matebula.
Sure. I hear you. Yeah. I mean, that just reflects the pulse of a nation, what you feel, isn't it?
Ashraf, good afternoon. It's Lodi here. Nah? You know, when it comes to driving, people are always on the rush on the road. They are always rushing. So that's why I'm not surprised when we get too many accidents. People are always rushing.
But I agree with you. People are always rushing, and it seems to be like the most normal thing we do, and the willingness amongst people to break the law in getting from place A to place B is like the most normal thing in the world, certainly in our country. Right, we'll talk about Northwest University and AI policy after this.
When you train for results, you don't quit halfway. Earn up to 7.35% interest with a Nedbank Just Invest account. Access your money within 24 hours. Keep your money agile. Get money fit with Nedbank. See money differently. Nedbank. For more information, visit nedbank.co.za. We're licensed FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. SAFM.
Okay, so here's some good news. The Northwest University has become the first South African university to adopt an official artificial intelligence or AI policy. According to the varsity's head of AI Hub, this marks a milestone for the sector. Clearly it does, and well, what does it really mean in terms of the impact that it will have on the university community? Professor Anne Verhoef is the director of the Northwest University AI Hub. Prof. Verhoef, thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Yes, thank you for inviting me. It's actually Anne, not Anne. But
I see.
Like
I can certainly see that, yes. Okay, yeah. Anne Verhoef, right. Yes. You see, that's when AI will understand very clearly that they'd be able to pick out the reality from that one there, right? Thank you.
Yes.
All right, let's talk about, so I take it this is significant. I mean, that you have AI policy, but that would that make you unique in South Africa? Meaning, that what's the difference between AI policy and actually using AI already practically within a campus situation?
Yes, so I think many universities in South Africa already use AI very effectively. But the problem without the policy is that you have often contradictory sort of voices, not a good direction or stance or unified approach in the universities. So that makes, I think, Northwest University unique, that we managed to develop a policy for AI and that we implementing it through our AI hub. And that's crucial because AI has so many risks, especially for academia, but it also has so many benefits if you manage to guide it and to steer it in the right direction.
So give us a sense of, when we say policy, examples of what that policy would entail.
Yes, so the policy basically spelled out what our stance is about AI, and that is clear. We chose that we want to embrace AI, but we qualified that we want to do it in a human-centered, ethical and responsible way. So it's not just carte blanche use, but in a way that we protect academic integrity, but also enhance research. And then the policy is important because it spells out the roles and responsibilities of students, of lecturers, of researchers, of management, that they all work in the same direction, that we also have a good governance structure in place. For example, our policy says that all AI matters should be governed by the AI steering committee of the university. And this committee is represented by the faculty members, by the library, by management. So at least there's a place where all the AI matters can be discussed. And that's important because AI, as I said, can affect research, teaching, learning. It's such a massive thing that we need a place to talk about it and to decide what are we going to do with this tool or with this issue, and how we're going to report to the different structures of the university.
Yeah, I mean, let's maybe just give me some examples. You know, for many people, AI is like this breath of fresh air that just makes our lives very easy. For others, it's just so complicated; it'll take away our jobs. And then there's also issues around ethics, right? I mean, yes. I for example, saw I think on Elon Musk's Grok platform, right, where people were asking, you know, if they saw a picture of a woman all dressed up, and they would just instruct that same AI platform to just change the clothing of that person, you know, wearing skimpily clothing. It was reacting to that. So that's sort of ethical issues that come into play, right? Perhaps give us more in terms of your policies of what you're trying to achieve.
Yes, so it's exactly that we want to address through this policy, to make every user attent on the issues with AI, because we need some AI literacy or training that points this out, that AI can be biased. If you ask Grok, for example, about Donald Trump, it will be saying he's a hero. But if you ask other tools like Deep Research, it will give you the opposite. So first of all, if you use AI and you want to use it ethically and responsibly, you have to be aware of the manipulation that's taking place through AI. It's not giving the correct answer. It's giving an answer that's already determined by who control the AI tool, which company. So that's already a point of responsible use. For example, to not only use one tool, but to use 2 or 3 tools to ask a question, especially in your subject field, if you're a researcher, to see what answers it gives. Then there's issues like copyright, of course, that other people's work are used without permission. There are issues on academic integrity, where students and more researchers are creating work through AI, with AI, and do not acknowledge that and basically submit it as their own work. There are issues of privacy, as you mentioned with the photos. You put a photo up and AI can do anything or do anything with that photo. Security and safety things we need to keep in mind. So there's a long list of things that is really affecting academia fundamentally. Especially what we try to do at universities, to let people think for themselves, to do research independently, responsibly. If students and researchers are more and more outsourcing their thinking, the research to AI, we will not get independent thinkers. Students will not read anymore. There will not be critical thinking. So all of those things are high-risk that we need to manage, and the policy tries to give guidance.
Absolutely. And therefore, just to conclude, what for you would like be the single biggest challenge, in adopting AI, but also in its implementation, being aware of the issues of ethics?
Yes, so I think from a university point of view, I think the challenge is to use it as we qualified it in a human-centered way. To always say, yes, AI must benefit humans. So if we're a university and want to do research in the best possible way, for example, we should use AI to see what can we do to improve our lives, or how can we use it to improve our teaching, learning. We should not, if we don't have a human-centered way of approaching AI, in the end, AI will control us or use us as just data for it. So again and again, we need to make that mind shift that we should be in control of AI and not the other way around. If we're over-dependent, over-reliant, we will lose control, and we will lose the opportunity to benefit from AI.
Well, point well made, Professor Anne Verhoef, Director of the Northwest University AI Hub, and this in response to the news that that university now becoming the first South African university to adopt an artificial intelligence policy. Wow, I would think that would be the norm across the board very, very quickly. Just before we get to the news headlines, here's another comment about taxi drivers and scholar transport.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Ashraf, you see, these taxi drivers are owning this scholars transport. They own this scholar transport. In the morning, they take their children to school. During the day, they are in the taxi rank. So that is why they are rushing to take the children to school and then come back, or they rush to collect the kids from school and come back to work as the taxis. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, right? And there's more comments, there's lots more comments, I can tell you. Male, female, young, old, in South Africa, outside South Africa, all 9 provinces and beyond. Welcome your thoughts as you connect to the National Pulse, because you really have a feel for the pulse, don't you? Right, 5:30, here's Greg Host with the news heads.
Quick look at the headlines. Police say 2 suspects have been arrested in connection with a shooting at Marikana on the Cape Flats, in which 8 people were killed. 9 learners have been injured after the driver of their scholar transport vehicle lost control and crashed into a tree in Pinetown, west of Durban. And the British Prime Minister's called for a negotiated solution to US President Donald Trump's claims on Greenland. There's a full update at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N3 southbound in Edenvale, queuing towards Giluli's interchange. The N1 southbound in Randburg, queuing towards Malibongwe Drive, and Golden Highway in Sebokeng is where a fatal crash is reported between the R28 and the R57 crossings. The road is closed. In KZN, a stationary vehicle on the N2 northbound after the N3 ramp, a stationary vehicle on the N3 southbound at Camperdown interchange. In Cape Town, the N1 outbound has a crash at Koeberg interchange, the M5 southbound queuing towards the N2 highway exit, and the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound queuing towards Hospital Bend. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Okay, Zai, of course, your coverage, understandably so, centered very much around the African Cup of Nations tournament. But now you want to talk about Morocco.
Yeah, and I think the fair play, this one's going to have to go to VAR, Ashraf, because it's such a loud controversy at the moment. And, you know, when the fair play becomes controversial, you know that this debate is going to ring for many days to come. But yeah, CAF's handling of the Africa Cup of Nations final has come under scrutiny after Morocco were awarded the Fair Play Prize despite widespread controversy during their loss to Senegal. Questions are being raised about the tournament's credibility following the walk-off protest as well as the crowd protest. Now, footage circulating after the final showed incidents involving ball boys and officials attempting to disrupt Senegal's goalkeeper behaviour that could have also been rooted earlier in the tournament. CAF is now reviewing the footage from the final as debate continues whether the Fair Play Award should be given to the hosts. Let's go to the story of Stellenbosch FC coach Gavin Hunt saying he will not prioritise one competition over another, despite his side sitting 14th on the Betway Premiership log at the halfway stage. Hunt insists he will field full-strength teams across the league, Nedbank Cup and Confederation Cup, saying resting players does not guarantee success. Stellies open their 2026 campaign away to Sekhukhune United before turning their attention to Sunday's Confed Cup clash against Algeria's CR Belouizdad.
It came up in a discussion, and maybe the other candidates wanted to bring 5-6 people in. But obviously, having known a lot of the people here, the CEO, Wes, Van, the goalkeeping coach, knowing these guys, you know, those are key guys for me because I know them, you know, and they're good people. That's important for me. Good human beings first, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of knowledge as well, you know, which is helpful to me and helpful to the club. That's important for me, you know. The rest of the people, I mean, obviously Liam and these guys, the media, obviously that's, you know, all part and parcel of it. And I'll get to meet everybody. But the people that you work with on a daily basis is vitally important, you know. So, yeah, see no reason.
All right, let's go to Kaizer Chiefs now, who will put mentality ahead of history when they face Golden Arrows in a Betway Premiership clash at FNB Stadium tomorrow night. Despite a mixed head-to-head record between the sides, Chiefs defender Paseka Mako insists past results mean very little. The focus is firmly on preparation and execution. Amakosi arrive in solid form with just one league defeat this season and an improved defensive structure that has seen them concede only 6 goals so far. Golden Arrows, meanwhile, come under pressure after losing 4 of their last 5 matches, and they'll be looking to rediscover consistency and belief under coach Nganoba Ngiti. Let's go to rugby. The Stormers could receive a timely defensive boost ahead of their United Rugby Championship Coastal Derby against the Sharks, with the possible return of Damien Willemse and Rowan Nel to the midfield. The Cape side conceded 13 tries in their last 2 Champions Cup outings after experimenting with combinations, but the Willemse-Nel partnership could help restore stability if both players pass late fitness tests. The unbeaten Stormers now brace for a physical challenge from a Shark side desperate for their first URC win at the DHL Stadium. And finally, tennis. World number 1 Aryna Sabalenka has safely booked her place in the second round of the Australian Open with a straight sets victory in Melbourne. The Belarusian eased past Frances Tiansova Rajanoa 6-4, 6-1, and Sabalenka was pleased with her willingness to mix up her game. She says adapting against an opponent she has never faced before was key, and just happy to get through the opening round in straight sets. That's your sport. Stay with us. Sport continues with Michael Abramson. Top Sport, 7 to 8 p.m. tonight. I'm Zai Khan.
Thanks for that, Zaya. I tell you what, I have no doubt tonight's show with Michael Abramson not to be missed.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
I tell you what, you have the African Cup of Nations and you've got the World Cup. And in many ways, the WEF coming together, the gathering in Davos, that cold place in the Alps, or the mountains rather, in Switzerland. I mean, that's like the World Cup of business. So I think, Jimmy.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon to the listeners. It certainly is, and this gathering is going to be particularly interesting. I think we're going to be in for quite the surprise for the first time in a long time. We know for many, many years that this agenda that is set at the World Economic Forum almost sets the tone for what countries are doing throughout the year, what conversations then follow throughout the year, especially given how early in the year it happens. This time round, I think all eyes are going to be on the conversations, or at least the statements that are going to be expected on Wednesday in particular. President Donald Trump is expected to address the World Economic Forum on Wednesday, and I, for one, can almost guarantee we're not going to be ready for what is going to be said there. Much has been the theme of the second presidential term of President Trump. We don't really know when he's going to say what exactly. But nevertheless, we are going to look into that. We're going to look ahead to the first day, how things have kicked off today, what's on the agenda today, where all of this fits in, and particularly how investors and how the attendees and delegates are feeling about that speech that's coming on Wednesday from President Trump. We're also going to be taking a look at the latest adjustments to competition law that have been made that could potentially be of aid to some of the sectors we've been looking at. We know that sectors like the steel sector and the ferrochrome sector have been struggling. We see that the government, as recently as the start of this year, have adjusted some regulation and introduced some amendments to some regulation that bolster collaboration in an effort to potentially help some of these sectors save themselves, or at least better align themselves with what market conditions might be presenting. So we're going to look at that and see just exactly what these amendments mean and where they put some of these sectors that we're looking at. And then we're going to dig a little deeper into that Trump conversation and that Trump effect with Professor at Gordon Institute of Business Sciences, Professor Adrian Saville. If you remember, last week we did have a conversation with him around whether or not President Trump was looking to use sanctions or looking to use tariffs as a form of sanctions. And we're going to do almost a part 2 to that conversation in light of what President Trump has said to the European Union and the members of NATO where it relates to Greenland. We're going to take a look at that and see how that's all fitting into geopolitics and how that could be driving some of the conversations at the World Economic Forum gathering as well. And then because it's Monday, we're going to wrap up the show with a personal finance conversation. We're going to be looking at understanding your credit score a little bit better. We're going to look at what it is, how to build it, how to improve it if it isn't where you would like it to be, and all of the other nitty-gritties in between. Before we get to those conversations, though, a sense of where the markets are at the moment. The markets are clearly feeling a bit nervous as well. If you look at some of the commodity movements, the gold price is heading towards $4,700 a fine ounce now. Remember, I did call that $5,000 a fine ounce level, and I did say it would be around the corner. I think we could very well reach that level this year, if not in the first quarter of this year, but we'll keep an eye on that, of course. Currently $4,666 a fine ounce. The Brent crude price, $64.04 a barrel. Silver is now at $93.94 a fine ounce. Platinum, $2,375 a fine ounce, and palladium, $1,862. If we look at the rand at the moment, it is at 16 rand 40 against the US dollar, back above 22 rand against the British pound, back above 19 rand against the euro, and at 11 rand against the Australian dollar. So giving back a bit of ground against those other major currencies, but still holding fairly steady against the US dollar. If we look at international indices and other markets, the all-share, well, at least internationally, markets were by and large in the red, with the exception of Shanghai, that was up 0.25%. The biggest loser in Asian markets would have been the Hang Seng in Hong Kong, down about 0.4%. European markets didn't fare much better. The CAC 40 down 1.6%. The DAX in Germany 1.1% to the red. The Nasdaq and the S&P are currently slightly in the red, down about 6 basis points in each case. And the all-share finished down 4 basis points. The top 40 up 1 basis point. That's because industrials were down 1.2, but resources were up 1.5, and financials were up 0.5%. We're going to be back just after the 6 p.m. news with more on these developments and what it is we can expect from this week. But for now, Ashraf, back to you.
Right, perfect. Enjoy your show. Lots to consider. 6 to 7 on SAFM, right? Now, what it means is we got about, 19 minutes or so thereabouts to get to the top of the hour at 6 o'clock. And you know what? All that time is devoted to you talking to me.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Right, so how do you talk? You talk by calling in live, and I would think if you're part of the National Pulse community, you would know this number off by heart, but you'd also save it on your phone, right? 086 000 2032. Then you have the option to WhatsApp, text or voice note, 0614 104 107. You can also tweet, tag SAFM Radio. You know, it helps if you use the hashtag The National Pulse. You can tag me as well, Ashraf Garda. Do the same thing on our Facebook page as well. And by the way, while you're at it, follow us on, that's SAFM Radio, and myself on Instagram and TikTok and everywhere else. We are there, right? Okay, I need to hear you out. Let's pick out your thoughts. That story about, I must say, and I heard what was said earlier about hometown advantage, and then Morocco gets the Fair Play Award. Like, how do they make those calls? Because it's clearly not one person. You must know that. It never is one person. How do they make those calls?
Ashraf, this is Richard from Durban. You making excuses for schools being closed down and making stories that school children should just be okay with traveling to school when local schools have been shut down. What are you making excuses for, Brew? Come now. The truth of the matter is we've got less schools than we had years ago. Have a look in the Eastern Cape on Google Maps and see how many schools on the Eastern Cape are marked temporarily closed, and tell me whether that is good for employment, for teachers, for jobs, for the development of our youth, for anything. Man, don't make excuses, Ashraf. It's not your excuse to make. It's unacceptable. Own up to it. Cheers, buddy. Good show otherwise. Strange to hear you make that comment. You don't always have to be argumentative.
Hunt, and listen, you know, I never made an excuse. I think you must just hear me very carefully. To set the record straight, the fact that there's less schools now than before, or schools are closing down, that is unacceptable. What I was talking about was transport. If someone links the fact that children are dying on the roads because they're traveling a greater distance, I'm saying people always travel, no matter who. Children, adults, we all travel. That doesn't mean they should travel. In an ideal situation, you would need to have learners going to the school of their choice in their own communities. That's the first prize. And they need never get out of it. So where would you think that I would make an excuse? Hey, by the way, I'm not even government, so why should I even defend anybody in charge? I'm not even the Minister of Education.
Ashraf, I don't see why people must blame the government for this accident, to say the government is the one which is to blame. Ashraf, this is just pure recklessness. If you look at most of this accident, either was overtaking on a barrier line, was overtaking on a blind spot, or it's just overspeeding. We are in the road every day. We see how these drivers who are ferrying kids, how they drive. They are so reckless. So these accidents are caused by recklessness and negligence. There's nothing else, because there is no capital punishment when someone is charged by culpable homicide after killing so many people. That's the problem. It's just recklessness. Thanks, James Johansberg.
Well, it's not just recklessness, it's recklessness. And I think that's the point that we were saying earlier. It doesn't mean now that because of this only young people die or scholars. Everybody dies on the roads in huge numbers because of the sense of complete waywardness about how people drive on our roads. And when it comes to public transport like these taxis, it's absolutely compounded, and it is completely unacceptable. Itumeleng in Centurion, let's talk AFCON.
Ashraf, very happy Senegal won the cup, because these North African countries, they're a bunch of cheats. They cheat all their way to the finals. Now they want to ban Samuel Eto'o for 4 games or 3 games or something like that, because he told them exactly where to get off. They're a bunch of cheats and criminals.
But I hear what you're saying.
Actually, I didn't want any of the 4 North African countries to be on the top 3. I didn't want that. I wanted Cameroon, Ivory Coast, and Senegal to be on the top 3. But, well, this one is there. Yeah. And they're a bunch of cheats. We all know that, and Kev is doing nothing about it.
I hear your point, but I mean, that makes the assumption that no other countries ever indulge in cheating. I'm not saying it's right, it's wrong. But that suggests that no other country indulges in any cheating at club level, at national level, at inter-club level, nothing at all.
How about this? Yeah, okay, I hear what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying? I mean,
4 nations.
I can tell you now, even in the PSL, people argue with each other about which clubs gets favoured. I'm not saying they're right. We hear that every single day.
And it doesn't make it right for them to cheat.
Regarding the Samuel Eto'o one, I think we just must make the distinction. Yes, there's the host nation, but we must make the distinction between the host nation and CAF. And when it comes to suspensions and meeting out suspensions and other punishment, that can't be Morocco's call. That would be ridiculous if it was. That's got to be the governing body's call.
Yeah, but the problem is when these North African countries are teaching, CAF does nothing about it.
Well, then that's CAF's problem, if that's the case. You get my point. Headed by a South African Nochal, if you understand how confusing this becomes. Because CAF is the controlling body. If they don't implement, like they implemented South Africa, remember regarding the player who had a booking during the World Cup qualifiers, that's a CAF problem. So if CAF doesn't implement, then you don't say it's Nigeria's problem or whoever they played. Remember when we almost lost out on the World Cup or the World Cup qualification. But putting it on the agenda, you certainly have, Itumeleng. Thanks for that, right? Right, what about Thabo Mbeki?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. I'm so disappointed by the comments that were made by Thabo Mbeki. I find it funny that Thabo Mbeki never questioned the IQ of people of KZN when they voted out the IFP and voted for ANC. But now when they're voting for MK and voting out the ANC, he's questioning their IQ. No, man. We can't have a former president who goes around making stupid allegations and tribalist comments. He's Percy from Potchefstroom.
Thank you for that, Percy. And your points are noted. I'm sure somebody will respond to that.
Warm greetings, Ashraf and the SAF family. Firstly, let me indicate I'm calling from a place called Ottawa, which is in KZN.
South Africa, not Canada. Ashraf, my heart goes out to those people involved in these floods and disasters. But I think a bigger disaster is on our way. When the president of the country, the chief of our armies, instructions are not followed, that is a recipe, fertile ground for a coup d'etat. And this is really concerning me. And once again, they are following the leader by creating a board of inquiry. Surely the Minister of Defense should know and through the protocols. Seriously, we can't have commissions of inquiries and this throughout our lives. Thank you, Ashraf. Have a good day. Bye.
Thanks for that call. Ottawa in South Africa, not Ottawa. You're right. That place in Quebec in Canada. Thanks for just reminding us of all of that, right? Back to the school stories.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Lalani here from Limpopo. Look, there could be few factors that contributed to the accident of the learners today. But for me, I travel plus 35K single trip to drop off and pick up my son at school. I never feel safe with this Scholar transport. And it's just unfortunate that it's not everyone who can be able to do this. Some people don't have cars, some they don't have time or the luxury to do that. But having to give my child to someone else to drop and pick them up every day, that is my biggest fear. So better if I'm there when anything happens. Not saying the accident will never happen if it's me driving, but I should be there, not with my kids. Thank you.
Well, listen, I mean, there's no question about it. If you have a child and you're sending them by a public transport, the one thing is like, a car of 4 people. The other is, and I know people use Ubers as well, right? Like 1 or 2 people in the car versus like a taxi. I think it is completely understandable if you are freaking out about it. Absolutely. More on the National Pulse in a moment.
You can become a victim of a legal problem: wrongful arrest, assault, uncontested divorce, rental disputes, maintenance matters, or labor problems. It can happen to you. Clientele Legal provides tough professional lawyers for an affordable monthly premium. Our legal team is standing by to assist you 24 hours a day. Join today. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
There's so many comments about school transport, which tells you when I ask you what is it that moves the National Pulse like today. We can talk about Trump and we can talk about Greenland and we can talk about Iran and Davos and other things too. But it just shows you the one thing that has struck a nerve has been the issue of scholar transport.
Ashraf, how's it? Tyrese here in Bethlehem. Ashraf, regarding this taxi accident, if it is true that the owner of that minibus taxi is also the chairperson of the Scholar Transport Association, then he must be charged with culpable homicide. He knows the law. He is part of the lawmakers regarding scholar transport, so he can't be hiring people who do not have driver's licenses. He must be held accountable.
Well, I think that has come through, and you are quite right.
Ashraf Garda, it's Yalezo here in Mthatha. Ashraf, I want to plead with the Minister of Police. In fact, even the Minister of Agriculture, Rural Development, and the President himself. Here in the former Transkei, especially in the Qumbu, Tsolo, Mthatha areas, people are dying due to stock theft. I don't know how the government plans to stop this thing. People come in at night, they take the stock by force. Cattle, sheep, goats, everything, they take it by force. And the villagers can't do anything because this syndicate is well organized. Like the people who are doing CIT, they are well armed, they shoot and kill. Please, I'm pleading with government. Yalezo here in Mthatha.
Well, I think your plea needs to be heard. And we don't need to say more than that. Thank you for that, right?
Yeah, Ashraf. The other thing also with these scholars, when they are picking kids in the morning, they bring roadworthy vehicles. Then there is a station, there are some stations where they exchange kids from these unroadworthy vehicles to, they take them from these roadworthy vehicles to unroadworthy vehicles. If you look in the morning, before these kids get to school in some areas, especially in Kalichaya, you see the kids are playing, waiting for their transport to come, because one car is picking kids 3-4 trips. So there is a rush there to make many trips as they can. So it's a big challenge. This thing need to be enforced. Because they want to maximize on one trip. Thank you so much.
Okay, again, a point made, right? Let's get to this one.
Ashraf, the man is right who is talking about North African teams cheating. We know how they cheat. Even in the CAF Champions League, in the Confederations Cup, we know how much they cheat. They cheat, they fall around, they waste time, showmanship. It's just a circus when North African teams play. And they claim penalties, they surround the referee. Ashraf, no. You don't have to defend them. The other guy was right, Ashraf. You don't have to defend everything. You don't have to correct everything. These are our feelings. And we're invalidating them when we talk and you try and correct us. No, Ashraf, you are not an expert in everything. Moses and Paulsov, thank you.
Moses, you know what? You're right and you're wrong. You have your own opinion, absolutely. But where there's a factual error, why can't my role is then to moderate that? Why shouldn't I say so? So, for example, when someone says Iran is a X amount percentage people who have the Muslim faith, and if I correct that to say I think it's 80% or 90%, then that's it. In this case here, I'm making the point that you can't. I think it's true that many people say that these North African teams tend to do a hell of a lot of showmanship and elements of cheating far too often. Pitso Mosawani's comments about it noted, and he's coached there. But all I'm saying is to suggest that they're the only ones who do it. That's also naive, don't you think?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. This issue with accidents on the road, it's going to continue over and over and over again. And there's always big talk about it when something nasty happens, something tragic happens. But I put the blame squarely on the government. They had the greatest opportunity to control the taxi industry when they recapitalized the taxis. They had the opportunity to put governors on the taxis at the time. I can remember phoning in or sending messages and so on, and even an email to the transport department to please put governors on the taxis. They will all travel at the same speed. They will not be able to race around and so on like they do today. This is Mike in Hillcrest, KZN.
Thanks, Mike. I think your point is well taken. At the time, in apartheid South Africa, the role of the growth of taxis in the black taxi industry was phenomenal and a huge welcome. Then South Africa did not regulate it well enough, and now we have these situations where at multiple levels it's out of control, even to the point where routes are challenged and people argue and people want to shut you out of routes, and there's lots of killings linked to that. Again, it does talk about a complete lack of governance. Point taken.
Hi, Ashraf in the SFM. Ashraf, I think the government must come in with a strategy to say you need to qualify to drive in the public transport. It doesn't matter the trucks, your behavior and so on and so on. They need to go and then test you. You cannot drive in the people in the taxi, hanging the hands outside driving like 140 speed, 120 on the 80 zone. So we need maybe to come in with the taxi drivers, the school children, the drivers. They need to qualify. They need to be tested before.
Yeah, point. Listen, I think that's the most obvious thing that has been said, and yet, and it's not being done. I mean, we just hear too many examples of that, isn't it?
Ashraf, how are you? Look, can you get someone who knows the FIFA rules so they can educate us? Because I think I read somewhere that players are not allowed to leave the soccer field unless they are permitted by the referee. Now, yesterday, the Senegal players left the soccer pitch, right, without the permission of the referee. And the referee allowed them to come inside again. And he didn't even give those players yellow card. Those players, they participated, and then the Morocco lost. But I just wanted clarity on whether they are allowed to leave the soccer pitch or they are not allowed to leave the soccer pitch. Thank you so much.
Well, look, that's a very good question. Listen, I'm not the FIFA expert. I'm not the referee. My common sense is they would not be allowed. I mean, because we're not restricting technical. It could be any, even club football. If you leave the field without telling the referee or the referee giving you permission, can you just imagine what would happen? So they're not allowed to. And you're right, they obviously didn't get booked on the return because it was a unique case. I mean, it was a football political hot potato that they had to deal with. It is a crazy scenario that played out, right? So clearly the rules were then bent, my understanding. But hey, my suggestion is Michael Abramson does the show from 7 to 8 this evening. I have no doubt he has to be covering that, the actual rules and the regulations in terms of what happens when you leave the field. Can you come back? How many minutes? When does a walkover take place? Or a forfeit, if I can call it that. Someone said 15 minutes. I believe they're out for 17 minutes. I don't know about all of that. All I know, it's been great hosting the show today. Thank you for listening in and contributing and being really a major contributor to the National Pulse community. So we'll do it again tomorrow, right? Now it's 6 o'clock. Here's the news with Greg.
Thank you again, Ashraf. Arrests over Cape Flat shooting and 9 learners injured in KZN crash. Good evening. Western Cape police say 2 suspects have been arrested in connection with a shooting at a shebeen at Marikana on the Cape Flats in which 8 people were killed. The Deputy Provincial Police Commissioner, Luanda Damoy.
We want to appeal to the community to say they should not be cooperative with these extortionists, because what we are finding, especially in the areas like Philippi, Nyanga, a lot of them are cooperating with these extortionists. They kind of make arrangements who's going to collect money for extortionists so that we don't catch them when they collect themselves. So we want to appeal to the community to say, report those to our toll-free number. Report those before you donate that money. But we are
My daily That's My Point feature. So, did you